I'd like to call the April 16th, 2013 Longmont City Council study session to order. Could we please start with a roll call?
Mayor Coombs.
Present.
Council members Bagley.
Here.
Finley. Here. Levison.
Here.
Samori.
Here.
Santos.
Here.
Witt.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, but we'll have like 30 seconds of silence and to commemorate the people that were injured and killed in Boston at the marathon. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Manager, do you have a report?
I do. I have a couple of items, but we have one that needs to go before the meeting. So
Okay, great.
Sandy wants to talk about some legislation that just hit, I believe, yesterday. Sandy? We can get that at the end in the city manager remarks at the end of the meeting. So
Okay.
Oh, here she comes.
She's running.
And she's here. Oh, Dawn. Dawn's going to give the presentation.
But that was a nice try.
I tried. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Dawn Quintana, Deputy City Clerk. I've been working with Sandy Cedar this year to learn legislative tracking. And tonight I've placed a copy of Senate Bill 203 on your desks, and that is the piece of legislation we would like to talk with you about tonight. 203 proposes to limit the use of public land for automotive service stations. It primarily is aimed at keeping government out of retail fuel sales, and we don't disagree with that. That's fine. However, they've not removed compressed natural gas from the definition of fuels. The reason that is important to us is because Fleet Services is working with a vendor on a public-private partnership to provide a compressed natural gas pump for our own vehicles, which would also provide a place for the public to then purchase this alternative fuel. This public-private partnership is desired even on the state level, and so the bill needs to be amended slightly to allow for this to happen more smoothly. We would like to request that Council oppose this bill unless amended, because it complicates the city's effort to engage in this public-private partnership for a compressed natural gas pump on city property. Questions?
Councilmember Witt.
I would move that we oppose Senate Bill, whatever this is. 203. Yes, thank you.
Second.
I better run over there and run a vote.
All right, shall we vote? Oh, sure. Sure.
And Councilmember, what your motion was to oppose unless amended. Was that appropriate? Okay. Sorry, I didn't catch that. Yes. And members of council, just to clarify, this bill actually passed the Senate today, and so that's why we're bringing it to you. Representative Singer is one of our representatives, and we'd like to ask for his help to amend it. But of course, don't do so unless you've directed us to.
Okay.
Just one quick question. That was, where was the definition? I didn't see that.
The definition of it is not exempted in the definition of fuel. It says that motor fuel on page 2, line 19, means any source of energy other than electricity.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, it passes 7-0.
Thank you very much, and good job done.
Public invited to be heard. The first person on the list is Michael Belmont. So please come down and state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members, Michael Belmont, 841 Tenacity.
Turn the mic on.
Hello.
Yeah.
Are we cooking now?
Yeah.
Mayor, thank you, and council members. Michael Belmont, 841 Tenacity Drive in Longmont. And since we're on the subject of natural gas, I'm here representing Our Health, Our Future, Our Longmont, the organization that facilitated the overwhelming citizen-supported charter amendment to ban fracking in Longmont. A year ago, fracking was not quite as well known as it is now in our fair town. In fact, back then when I was petitioning to gather signatures to get the amendment on the November ballot, I asked a citizen if they were familiar with fracking and the dangers surrounding it. That citizen blushed and sheepishly said, "Isn't that a sex term?" True story. Well, I think we've come a long way. One might even say that fracking has become a household word around these parts. And now that we are somewhat familiar with the term, it's a perfect time to drill down a little deeper and get more information on the subject. And to that end, Our Health, Our Future, Our Longmont, and Patagonia, the outdoor clothing company, are sponsoring a conference on fracking called Be Fracture, that's S-U-R-E, Fracture, Saturday, April 27th, from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at our conference center right here in Longmont. Attendees will have the opportunity to ask questions of some of the country's foremost experts on the subject, starting with the nationally known Dr. Anthony Ingraffia, who is a professor of engineering at Cornell University, Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, a noted national expert on the subject. He was named by Time as one of its people who matter. So please go to ourlongmont.org for more information and to register for the conference. We'll not only feed your insatiable appetite to know more about fracking, but we will feed you fabulous food for the body as well as the soul, because no one does soul like Hazel Miller, who will be entertaining. So please do join us Saturday, April 27, 9 to 4:30. Go to ourlongmont.org for more information and to register. We'd love to see you there. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Elaine Wilson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Elaine Wilson. I live in the Reservoir neighborhood at 1704 County Road 28. I am here to talk to you about our Reservoir Trail. I was at the meeting when the City Council gave Public Works and Natural Resource Department the go-ahead to continue developing the Reservoir Trail. This approval supposedly included working together with local homeowners. The council had expressed concern that the homeowners had not been given adequate opportunity to be involved in the development process. At that meeting, several of the homeowners volunteered to participate in the committee formulating this trail. My husband and I have attended all of the homeowner meetings that we received notification on. Most meetings were attended by 20 or less people. From our perspective, these meetings simply gave a platform for people to voice their thoughts without receiving feedback from PWNR on their decisions. On December 6, 2012, we were asked by PWNR to give our input for the trail alternatives by placing dots on the reservoir map, indicating where to place the preferred trail. The overwhelming majority of the community directly affected by this trail were not in favor of the loop trail. Note, attendance was 20 people. On January 30th, 2013, the focus group of Longmont was asked for their input. The notes presented by PWNR indicated that all attendees were for the loop trail. Note, attendance 4 people. On February 27th, 2013, the public was shown the trail map. It consisted of a loop trail as the preferred trail. All other alternatives to this trail were also loop trails. When the PWNR was questioned about what happened to the alternatively proposed U or J-shaped trails, the answer was that the other input they had received made it clear that the loop shape was the preferred trail. On March 11th, 2013, at the Parks and Rec meeting, the ALTA representative said that he had been commissioned to create a map showing the preferred and alternate trails as a loop trail. Again, no U or J-shaped trail was considered. At this point in time, the homeowners of this neighborhood are questioning to what extent our voices are being heard. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Gailey's Kelly. Is that Gail? Looks like a Z at the end.
Mayor Combs, City Council. My name is Gail Kelly. I live at 1670 County Road 28 by Union Reservoir. Regarding the meeting on March 12, 2013 with PWNR, presentation to Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Several of us attended the meeting where Kathy Crone with PWNR and Josh with ALTA presented the trail plan to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. The following points are of concern. There was no mention of a U trail, which is a little redundant, or a J trail at this meeting with the advisory board. Josh stated that ALTA was hired to create a full loop trail around Union Reservoir. Josh, why did you present the U trail and J trail at our presentation on December 6th? You are now considering that horses will have access to the trail, not dogs. Horses were never mentioned at any of our meetings. An advisory board member made the comment, horses and kids don't mix. Let's see, trail will be closed 1 hour after sunset, open 1 hour before dawn. Kathy, you told the advisory board the trail would only be closed 1 or 2 days during the summer. What about the ag closures, spraying, field work with heavy equipment, planting, and harvesting? The security is, and another point of concern, security is primarily the rangers on the south side of the lake. Any backup? Without adequate rangers staffing in place, the fear is the enforcement of rules and regulations to protect our natural resources on the proposed trail around Union Reservoir will not be a priority. What happens when the summer is over? And another concern, can the trail be accessed from Road 28 pullouts? Of course it can. People will have access to the trail all winter long. There's nothing to stop them. There's no gates, no fences, anything. Many comparisons were made to McIntosh Lake. We failed to see the similarities, i.e., neighborhood, country, fences, bushes, ag, no ag, horses, no horses, paved, crusher rock. And nothing was said about the dangerous conditions of County Road 26 and County Road 28 or upkeep. If the roads aren't taken care of, what makes us think the trails would be? Also, the traffic on County Road and County Line is getting a lot more dangerous. And you have the trail crossing over County Line from Ham Park to connect up with the trail. How scary is that? See, when an advisory board member inquired about cost, Kathy stated, we don't know yet because to put a cost with a trail plan would cost more money. The advisory board member put forth a motion that until costs were available, they should delay moving forward. Motion did not get a second. I guess money is not that important. Build the trail, damn the cost.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up. Tammy Wyckoff.
Why am I going to have to talk fast? Good evening, Mayor Combs and Longmont City Council. Tammy Wyckoff, 1450 Well County Road, 28 Longmont, 80504. I'm here this evening regarding what is now called the preferred trail alignment by the Public Works and Natural Resources. The word preferred, I question the word preferred for the following reasons. One, a year ago, there were 1,350 surveys sent with 51 responses. Assuming, since it was not stated by PWNR, that the 51 responses were in favor of the trail, this represents only 3%. Quoted from the document dated March 11th by Kathy and Josh with Alta, the preferred, quote, the preferred trail alignment is a 5.6 mile loop trail around the reservoir, which meets all of the project goals and objectives. Most importantly, the trail responds to the long-awaited vision of the community to have a recreational trail in this area, end of quote. To meet 3% does not constitute vision of the community. There have been 9 public meetings according to PWNR. 2 of the meetings had attendance of 20, the next 23. The other 7 meetings averaged 6 attendees, and at 2 of them, only 1 person. All of the above mentioned public meetings, the majority, 97%, were not in favor of the trail on the north or the east side for the following reasons. The north and east sides represent the highest cost due to need for trail water ditches, piping, culverts, swales, and underground infrastructure. 2, highest wildlife disturbance. 3, agriculture disturbance, which includes closing the trail for 20-plus days for ag spraying, cultivating, planting, and harvesting. Also, the trail will be closed during the rapture nesting period. 4, a focus group meeting of 4 Longmont residents was formed to review this presentation. Individuals affected by the trail were not invited to this meeting to provide any comments or concerns. You know, I'm so worried that I'm going to run out of time that I'm going to try and hit things that were not hit before.
Yellow light will come on and to let you know you got a minute left, so you're still good.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I'll go fast. 30-second hand counting. Memo from Alta dated January 13 regarding the public meeting on December 6, where attendees were invited to place dots, blue dots, where they wanted the trail. Blue dots meant that was preferred. Yellow dots meant they didn't want a trail. Yet Alta stated in their memo that the exercise revealed a desire for the loop trail. I was on, is that it?
Yeah,
That's
it.
the buzzer. Okay, can I just say goodbye?
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to say in closing, even though we've missed 2 or 3 other pages.
No, your time's up.
I sincerely implore each of you to consider the above mentioned.
Thank you. Chuck Mock. So is there no Chuck Mark? Oh. Okay. Joe Keller?
Mayor and Council, my name is Joe Kelleher. I live at 12628 Well County Road 1 on the west side of the reservoir. I have 11 acres. I have 3 points. I had been to 2 of these meetings, and I still can't get an answer exactly where this trail is going to be east of me. Is it going to be completely on Union Reservoir land, or is it am I going to have to give some land to you guys? And I don't have an answer to that yet. Number 2, the trail on the northeast corner is going right between the lake and 3 houses. The closest, as I can figure, is 50 to 60 feet from the back door of one of the houses. It's just really close and an invasion of these people's property, or not property, just their privacy. Because you can do it. You own the land. You can do whatever you want there. But it makes much more sense to run that trail around to the road and north of them. You're going to go on the southeast corner. The plan is to take the trail across Road 28, around up to Well County Road, and then around that. The reason for that, I assume, is you're trying to leave the pelicans alone. And that's nice. I like the pelicans. But, you know, you've also got 3 houses right there that you're going to really inconvenience. You could easily go do the same kind of thing, just go out to the road or go out to, across the road or something. You could get around those 3 houses. And it's just an invasion of their privacy, really. I just can't believe you're considering the wildlife, but you're not considering the people. The third thing is we never thought the reservoir would be raised forever. And who knows? But there is some talk now. Xcel Energy might be interested in combining with the city and enlarging the reservoir. Now, you guys know much about that, or the city should know much more about that than the rumors I hear. But if that's in the case in the next 5 or 10 years, you don't want to spend $1 million on this. It's my only comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Daryl Felton.
My name is Daryl Felton. I live at 1105 Well County Road 28. And my concern is with the trail on the north side of the lake going through the wildlife. You know, that's the bird sanctuary on that side, and I don't know how they're going to go along that side without disturbing all the cattails and everything. Unless they do go straight through to 28 and go along 28. And I didn't see any reason for them going through them, going through the birding areas. And it looks to me like they're going to. And I suppose they're just going to do it anyway, huh? Thank you.
Trevor Boone. Actually, go ahead.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Trevor Bain. My address is 4643 Palmer Court, and I live on Lake Valley, and this is a little bit on the lighter note.
I'm Tegan Connectal, and I live at 3819 14th Circle.
We are students at Silver Creek High School and are members of the Leadership Academy there, and we are working on a project to show respect and acknowledge the hardworking staff at our Public Works Department. These hardworking men and women keep our streets clean, keep the power on, and often go on unacknowledged for simply keeping Longmont running.
Next week, April 22nd through the 26th, we are encouraging this council and all citizens of Longmont to honor and simply say thank you to the person who picks up your trash or other public works professionals you come in contact with. We will also be holding a small breakfast at the Public Works facility on Thursday the 25th and presenting a thank you banner from members of the Silver Creek community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Dick.
Mayor and Council. I'm Ron Dick, and I live at 13,000 Well County Road 1, which is on the north side of the proposed trail. There's a couple concerns I have. Is my house is fairly close to where the trail is going to be, and you're looking to put a tremendous amount of trees and vegetation there, and I'm concerned about who's going to be policing that, where people could be hiding. People could be, we know what happens at Jim Ham Pond. There's not enough policing there. We're in Well County. There's one sheriff in that section of town who's going to be policing that part to protect the citizens of Well County. We're not citizens of Longmont. Also, if you look at a Google map or you look at this map, you can see that we have a goose blind in the center of our field, and I'd ask and recommend that you keep the trail at least 1,000 feet for damage from, because we will continue to hunt on that piece of property because we can legally do that. And so having that trail that close to where that goose blind is could create some issues. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to address the council at this time? Please come down and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Clyde Yeager, and I don't live out there. I live at 917 Terry Street in Longmont. And I'm kind of concerned that putting a sidewalk all the way around, or a walkway all the way around the lake, and then later on raising the lake is just throwing money into a hole. Whether we can afford it or not, I don't know of any. I've talked to a few people, and I don't know anybody who sides with let's throw away now and then do it over again after we've expanded the lake. And I was also wondering if the city has to deal with federal agencies like FEMA or whoever would handle wildlife and wetlands and so forth, and if they have put anything in place to mitigate damages to that or private properties. I would think that if you damage any wetland, you'd have to set other wetland aside somewhere else. So I don't see that, if that's happening, I don't see how I could support that, or I don't know how anyone else could. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Good evening. I'm Rachel Brenna. This is Natalie Brenna. We're at 516 Collier Street, and we just want to express our support for the trail. We are avid trail users and would really appreciate the opportunity to be able to go all the way around Union Reservoir and appreciate the wildlife and all that has to offer. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Next, we have a proclamation designating April 14th to the 20th as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in Longmont. So I'll read who's
Mayor, Deputy Public Safety Chief Paul Zuber, and Longmont Emergency Communications personnel will accept this proclamation.
Okay. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and then you guys can speak to it. Proclamation designating April 14th to the 20th, 2013 as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in Longmont, Colorado. Whereas when emergencies occur, the prompt response of the emergency services personnel is critical to the protection of the life and preservation of property, and whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from those called the Longmont Emergency Communications Center, and whereas professional public service communication specialists are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services, and whereas communication specialists are the single vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel by monitoring their activities, providing information, and ensuring their safeties, and whereas communication specialists have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients, and whereas each Longmont Emergency Communications Center specialist has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job. Now, therefore, I, Dennis L. Coombs, Mayor, by the virtue of authority vested in me and the City Council of the City of Longmont, do hereby proclaim the week of April 14th through the 20th, 2013, as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in Longmont. And I encourage our community to honor the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. Would you like to make this comment? Okay, come on. All right. Then we'll
Bright lights. Wait a minute, if you guys are here.
Why did you video? No.
Yes. Love the video.
Location.
Come on. You're a big group. Okay. Ready, 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more.
very much.
Mayor, while you're getting seated, I should just mention that that our wonderful 911 dispatchers have recently put out a commercial around knowing your location before you call 911. And it's out on our YouTube site right now. If you want to check it out, it's on that. It's also on our home site, and it's wonderful. They did a great job with it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, on the study session items, I think we want to reverse the order and have item B be first and item A second. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. All right, so do you want to introduce the...
You betcha. The first item then will be the introduction of the draft Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan. And I believe Kim Sugar, Kathy Cron will be presenting.
Well, good evening. I'll introduce while Ryan pulls up the presentation. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Kathy Cron. I'm a project manager with the Natural Resources Division of the Public Works and Natural Resources Department. And I'm here tonight with Ryan Matau of MIG. And we're here to introduce the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan. We also have Russ Yager and Ian Fairclough, and they're with RPI Consulting. They're part of the team, and part of the introduction is also going to be an introduction to their efforts to date on the park development fee study. So there's a little bit of introduction to that tonight as well. And before I hand the presentation over to Ryan, who's going to walk you through the plan, I also wanted to take a minute to acknowledge the work that's gone into the plan from our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, as well as our we had a multi-departmental team, staff team working on this plan, as well as the consulting team, but as well as the community. Ryan will go over the participation numbers in the presentation, which is significant numbers. So it's important to note that the process for developing the plan that we put forth was really about listening to each group and developing a vision that's based on what we heard. The Parks and Recreation Advisory Board should be commended for their commitment to this effort. They've put in countless hours reviewing the input, the questionnaire results, and the preliminary recommendations both on their own time and in extra meetings beyond the regularly scheduled monthly meetings. Last night was their second meeting of 3 meetings this month, and I think this is the 3rd month in a row that they've had extra meetings to devote time to this plan. So they've been an exceptional group to work with, and I think some of them are here tonight, so showing their commitment as well. So again, I wanted to remind you this is simply an introduction. I know you just got the plan on Friday. We'll come back to you June, I think, for more in-depth comments, and we'll gather comments. We've also introduced the plan to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board last night. We're rolling it out to the community, to all city staff, beyond just the staff team. So this is really the launching of that public review period. Also, before moving on to Ryan, I'd like to acknowledge that this plan is really a part of a series of plans. What you're being introduced to tonight is really the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan that was the original scope that was envisioned for this plan. We wanted to keep it on the timeline. Since we launched that plan and we put together this team, we realized the efficiencies to also looking at the ADA needs of the city and the park system, as well as including a recreational master plan to look further into the recreational needs and the recreational programming needs. So those efforts are sort of together. There's an efficiency in having the same team look at them all. They can all speak to one another and guide this plan, but they are sort of on individual timelines so that those efforts don't hold this planning effort behind. So Ryan will get into a little bit of that as well. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ryan to walk you through the plan, and then we'll answer your questions.
Move that up a little bit. Mayor, City Council, thank you again for having me here and for your support in helping us come into your community and work on this exciting project. So as Kathy mentioned, we are here to introduce the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan, which we're really proud of, but we're not done with yet. And that's an important part of what's going on, is that this is actually the ongoing community involvement. Now that we've heard everything that we're going to hear about developing the plan, we want to hear if we got it right and how we can refine that. So we're really excited to roll this out for you. I want to Kathy did a great job of introducing us as well. I do want to give a really quick window, because you all have met me once before. I wanted to give a quick opportunity for Russ from RPI to give a little bit about their role on our team and who they are, just to have that out of the way.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you very much for allowing us to talk to you about this. My name is Russ Yager, and I'm the principal and partner at RPI Consulting. We're an economics and fiscal planning firm with offices in Denver and Durango, and we've been working with MIG on your parks plan, specifically the parks improvement fee component. We were originally brought in to serve in an advisory format, basically giving commentary in terms of how the fee could be evaluated relative to the update, and now we're working with MIG to update the fee so that it works in concert with the improvements you're doing in the master plan. A little later in the presentation, Ian Barraclough, an analyst with our firm, is going to stand up and talk to you a little bit more about methodology, but and then we'd be happy to answer any questions concerning that component. Thanks.
So we're really excited to have Russ and his team on this because we knew that this has been an important topic for you as a city. We wanted to make sure that we had the experts, and that's who we got. As Kathy mentioned as well, this is really part of a three-part effort, and this will be the first of 3 plans that will roll out of this process. All 3 of them were fed by the same public participation process to start with, and then we'll have some supplemental work going on. But I wanted to give you just a little bit of a breakdown of what the individual pieces are going to be dealing with. Tonight we're talking about the Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan, and this is really about how do we build out this system? What are the needs for the physical facilities, the park lands, that are aligned with your community's desires and wants and needs, and making sure that we're on a solid footing, not only from a funding perspective, which is part of what RPI is involved in, but also that we're continuing to move forward under a coordinated vision that really has the support of your community. The other 2 pieces of the plan, the first one is the ADA Self-Assessment and Transition Plan, which is driven by new regulations coming into effect for Parks and Recreation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And this is really about identifying the specific barriers that people with disabilities face in accessing the park and recreation features that people love here in Longmont. What are the required improvements? There are some very definite requirements around planning for and implementing a long-term strategy for those improvements. And how is this community prepared to approach those needs? We have the choice. You have the choice as a community to, meet the requirements, or to go a little bit beyond and find unique opportunities to really get a broader vision of that accessibility in the system. The Recreation Master Plan, which will be the third piece, is really about figuring out the lines of business, the ways to make the parks and recreation facilities that you have to maximize their use and to really get the involvement of the community in them, and focusing in on what's needed, what's relevant, and what we can do really well here in Longmont. And I think that that's an important aspect. So these have been running on parallel paths. Our team has been leading all of that effort and working with the various relevant staff folk. Where we're at right now is a really key point for this process, but also it's the important space where these 3 projects overlap, and we make sure that before we set this plan down and say we're done with it, that we really do have the integration between the 3 efforts. And so I'm going to walk you through what is really a 5-chapter plan that starts with, from the very beginning in the introduction, talking about this is your community's plan. This is a plan based on what we heard in your community. We're not in the business of just bringing you ideas and saying, well, what do you think of this? What we are about is bringing a process to the community where we can surface the ideas that have been floating around for a while And we've used a wide variety of methods to do this. Some of them are continuing on. As I said, this is really part of the public involvement process right here, is getting the word out about this draft, making sure that what we heard and what we've turned that into makes sense to this community. As we went through that process, we were tracking results, both to get a general count of how many people we touched, which we think is easily over 1,300. It's a little bit hard to count when you've got a lot of people coming to a community event, but of those, almost 800 filled out some amount of demographic information for us, which allowed us to keep track and really make sure, as you requested, that this is a representative plan, that this reached the broadest possible cross-section of your community in as representative a way as we could. And some of the results are detailed in the first appendix of this plan as well. Now, that representation isn't just about the demographic characteristics, it's also about geography. And we asked where people were coming from, and we found that in our results that this actually matched up really closely to the residential areas of Longmont, the kind of proportionality of that across the four corners of the city. And what we heard was actually, the last time that I was here, we talked a lot about the themes that we had heard from the community. And I'm not going to go back over those, because what we have done with those now is turn those into the goals of this plan, just a direct connection between those themes and what we analyzed and how the goals rolled out. But before we get there, I want to just reemphasize the importance of understanding where we're at now. And the work that went in from the staff level, from our planning team, from the community, of really getting a good, solid understanding of what's on the ground, what's important, what we need to be doing, and how we can, starting to identify how we can improve that. We now have a new and improved Parks and Recreation and Trails map that really gets at the specifics of what this city owns, and it ties into other efforts going on in the city around asset management, and also looking into the kind of updating the current, as of this month, how much trail you have built. And so from there, really the important part of this plan and the kind of new material to you and to the community in general starts in Chapter 3, which is really talking about the future of this park system. And the future of this park system is completely based around this vision, which I'll read out for the record here. Longmont's well-designed and maintained system of parks, facilities, and trails are an integral part of the community. They're relevant to the times, tailored to meet neighborhood, family, and individual needs, accessible and supporting a healthy, engaged, and economically vibrant Longmont. Underneath that vision, we've recommended 5 goals that really tie in very closely to those themes that we heard throughout the public involvement process. And I'm going to walk through those and talk a little bit about the recommendations that fall underneath those, because in this is the meat of the direction that we're recommending here. And all of those goals working together form, in map form anyway, this concept, which is the 6th map in this document, and a useful one to be thinking about. And I just want to point out the features of this. The broad orange lines here are meant to represent not every pathway in the community, but an important network of recreation opportunities that is encapsulated in the trails and other connections. The blue stars on this map are future park development areas. The brown stars are planned areas for future major recreation facilities. And the purple dashed areas are clusters of parks that really contribute at a very high level to the unique identity of this community. And all of these things were talked about in the analysis at some level, but have been refined and thought out and provided more direction here. The other 2 goal areas really apply to the entire system, and those are about renewal and about sustaining. And I'm going to go through each one of them briefly here. The first goal is really about the reinvestment in your park system, and this was one of the features that we were asked specifically to address in this community. As you've moved forward, this is an important topic for the entire community, and we heard it over and over again. But in this area, we talk about an aggressive reinvestment to bring these facilities back up to the level of quality and maintain them at that level of quality into the future. Integrating ADA improvement priorities that will be identified out of that transition plan, and the long-term renewal of all investments. And this is a point that I can't emphasize enough, but even the parks that are just now opening, your Dry Creek Park that hasn't even, brought down the construction fencing yet, that park needs to be planned for renewal 30 years out, or 40 years out, and we need to be thinking about those things now. And ultimately, that has a lot of implications across the system and even into the recreation services. And one of the integration points with the Recreation Master Plan is that the renewal of important sites is going to impact the ongoing revenue generation potential of some of your facilities. And the targets that you set in your budget for those revenue generation are tied to the investment that you make back into those systems, as well as the economic benefits that you're getting out of your park system. Everything from property value to attraction of tourism and major community events. Those things will be impacted by the need for reinvestment over the future years to come here. The second goal is complete the system. And this is really about the new things that are needed to finish out that system over the long term. Future parks to fill gap areas. But it's not just about a new park everywhere that there isn't one now. We have to find other alternatives to filling those gaps that will involve some creative partnerships as well as some other new ideas that are listed in the plan. Also adding major facilities, as we mentioned on the concept, there are some places where those are already planned. But to do that really after carefully considering upgrading what exists and a focus on let's make the most of the facilities that we have, let's concentrate the facilities where we have them now, and look at the impacts of those new facilities on what exists now. So older facilities are going to have some impacts if you build new ones that could conceivably either compete or duplicate those services. The third goal is about connecting. And this is really recognizing that trails are not just a way to get from A to B, and that we heard this over and over again in this community. We've been hearing it across the country, that trails are the destination. They are the recreation amenity in and of themselves, serving much the same function as park land in a lot of places. And we've envisioned a system of connected loops that aren't really just about getting to the park. They're about enjoying the trail experience and the activities that people want to do on those trails. And in those places where we don't have greenways, and it was one of the analysis points, finding ways to bring that trail experience into the urban parts of the city and onto the streets and into the sidewalks as an alternative to the parks and recreation sites. The fourth goal, this is really about Longmont's unique identity and distinguishing this community from other communities in Colorado and other communities across the country, using the uniqueness of this park system as a key element. Building that into parks at all levels, but really focusing in on a few key clusters of sites that really have the potential to be major attractions, major community destinations, not just for your residents, but for visitors. And the final goal in this set is sustain, and this is about everything long-term. This is about thinking about this system the way that the founders of this city thought about adding parks from day one. It's about the future of this community and how do we invest in quality and efficiency, and those two things are definitely linked together in this, and finding a more diverse set of funding sources. We're not going to be able to rely just on the park development fee to accomplish these planning objectives. With that in mind, there's a lot of recommendations here. There's a lot of projects here, and this is a very long-term plan. There are going to be a lot of decisions to be made over the future, and what we have designed this plan with that in mind, and thinking about how to take it from a recommendation into action. And the important part of that is that we can provide you with tools that will adapt to your changing situations, that will help you prioritize projects, that will help set out some strategies for implementing this plan. And we'll talk about the specifics of the funding options that you've been exploring and some of the implications of the recommendations. When prioritizing park and recreation projects, there's always going to be some favorites. There's going to be some things that we really, really want to do. But there's also an important set of things that we must do that are driven by legal requirements, that are driven by health and safety requirements, building codes, upgrades that need to happen. And those projects need to be pulled aside and completed in a timely way. We also see a set of projects that are kind of a low-cost, high-impact. These are kind of the quick wins that you can accomplish in the relatively short term. in a lot of the ways that you've been continuing to develop the system over time. And then ultimately, the lion's share of those projects that are identified here are still going to be decision points. And we've created a system that allows your staff, your PRAB, and you as decision makers to help sort those against these planned goals and identify a way to really set out annual and as your 5-year CIP rolls through, work plans that keep moving you towards that community vision. An important part of those implementation strategies is a recognition that there is a backlog of these renewal projects that needs to be addressed, and that one of the strategies that we've laid out is a major investment to get you over a current hump in those projects that need to happen, and that will add some stability to that renewal investment that needs to be going on regularly over the long term. We also want you to focus in on how to meet multiple objectives, not just multiple goals in this plan, but also objectives from other plans in the city. How do we meet transportation needs? How do we meet health and wellness and community well-being needs, while also achieving some of the things that are laid out here? Some of those quick win projects across these goals can be real demonstrations that build up to a major investment, that build up the understanding of the community about why we would need to make a major investment in this park system, either to complete it or to do some mix of renewal, completion, connection. All of these things are very important, and they're all paths that should be balanced as we implement this plan. And another important strategy is really starting to think about and identifying some type of mechanism, possibly a sinking fund kind of mechanism, to really be thinking about the long-term renewal of these sites. Because, as we said, even though you're opening new sites right now, we should be putting a little money away, much like we do in our personal budgets, for that future need. A new roof may not be the most exciting thing you need to do, but it's going to be important when it comes time. The funding sources, we're definitely anticipating that most of the existing sources that you've been very successful at using in your system, from grants to the park development fee and your general fund, are going to continue to be an important role here. But as you all have been exploring, there's also additional needs, and we need to be thinking about funding across operations and maintenance, capital funding, and renewal funding. All three of those need to be addressed, and the current resources are not going to cover those needs in the long term. And with that, one of the things that we wanted to help kind of hammer out is the overall role that the park development fee plays in that. And as part of that, there's a lot of understanding what's been going on in the past with the fee, but more importantly, how do we take that fee bring that fee into alignment with this park with this new park concept. And I'm going to invite Ian up to talk a little bit about the methodology that we're going to employ here, and we'll be bringing back to you some additional numbers as well as results of the fee study as we move forward with the plan review here. So,
good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm going to give a real quick overview of impact fees generally and how we are approaching the fee in this specific instance. But first, I'd like to acknowledge that this is a really unique instance where we get to integrate an impact fee with larger planning efforts. And I think it really speaks to the thoughtfulness of not only MIG, but your staff and the city itself. This is kind of an ongoing pattern as we dug in here, that Longmont has a history of planning for capital facilities. And I think that's unique compared to a lot of communities across Colorado. And so, in general, how we're approaching this plan is in our fee is we're really taking guidance from the plan itself. We're moving away. The plan really stresses completing the system, moving towards a whole system, not just isolated pieces here and there. And that's really involving how we're going to create and design this fee. I should state right up front that we're in the stages of still crafting it. We're not super far along in our process yet. So we're moving away from the history, which is a kind of a generic vanilla approach of 12 acres per 1,000 people, and that's a good way to do it when the fee started, because Longmont was rapidly developing it, and the fee really needed to focus on system expansion. But now that Longmont has become relatively built out, it's a great time to revisit this fee and revisit how we're designing it. And so we're going more to this plan-based fee, which is really a good thing. So some of the advantages, first of all, is we're not tying the funds to land acquisition as much. So we're going to be able to use our funds for system completion or capacity improvements. You know, the system as a whole already kind of has enough land, and now we just need to focus on making sure that the land is supported with facilities that can provide parks and recreation services to residents. It's also going to give the staff and anybody working in the Parks Department a really clear direction of how to spend impact fees and what capital expenditures need to be included in upcoming planning discussions. And so that's really good because we're, again, moving away from this sort of abstract idea of acreage and per acre development to, oh, we're going to put in you know, certain facilities and we're going to develop certain parks. And what's really great about this is it also provides a level of transparency for the city. You know, when someone plunks down money for an impact fee, it's kind of abstract that it's paying for parks in the future. But this will allow planning department and parks department to say, hey, you know what, this is what these funds are going to go towards. So it really gives a good idea of how the city is going to be spending its money in the future. Again, we're gonna really design it on around completing the system, and it's also really great that we get to integrate it with all the ongoing. And in this case, we even beyond this plan, there's a lot of great planning efforts that have occurred in the recent past that is really great for us because we get to really integrate this fee and make it robust and connect it to a lot of documents and efforts that the city has done. So real quick overview of impact fees. We have to break it down to an individual unit because that's how they're paid for, and we call those demand units. And in this case, a demand unit, we break it down to a residential unit. When a house is built, it has the potential to house people who demand park services from the city. And we're going to take it even a step further and break it into single-family and multifamily homes because a multifamily home typically has a not much, but a relatively smaller household size than a single-family home. And you need to recognize that difference, that more service is going to come from your single-family homes than your multifamily homes. We also need some sort of horizon, some sort of time frame for this fee and these improvements to occur. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 5, 10, 15 years, but there needs to be a future endpoint. And so we're going to use the build-out timeline from the comprehensive plan. We're looking at a complete system, and we're going to leverage that against a complete, a developed city. Really important is we're going to add a crediting mechanism. A crediting mechanism is just where the city acknowledges that revenues from property taxes or sales taxes that your residents pay do trickle down and eventually pay for capital in your park system. And it's actually required by statute that the city acknowledges this fact. So we're going to put that in there. The fee schedule is simply our base cost minus our credits, and then maybe perhaps the most important part of the methodology and what we really need to continue here is the capital improvements plan, and that's a list of projects with actual cost figures to help us come up with that cost basis on a per unit level. An overview of how just the specific elements that we are going to integrate into our methodology, the specific parts of the plan, and that the city and other city documents into our methodology. Again, we're really looking at this whole system concept that's very, very prevalent in the master plan. We're taking those goals 2 and 3, complete and connect, and we're digging really into those aspects. We're using the park inventory to make sure that the level of service that we provide in the future is consistent with the level of service that's being provided now, because that's another important aspect of impact fees is you can't use them to raise the level of service. And we're also using the planning and development guidelines in the master plan to ensure that all the projects we list in our capital facilities plan are consistent with the guidelines outlined by the plan. And then we're using the build-out analysis from the comp plan and the city budgets to kind of help us with that build-out time frame and to kind of figure out those credits. And the end result of this is going to be an impact fee that's rather unique in the fact that it's really, really integrated into not only the master plan, but other planning documents and planning efforts. And it's going to create a really robust, defensible fee that's rather unique, and it's really cool to kind of work on this. Lastly, we're going to kind of clean up the last fee. The last fee was kind of getting a little cumbersome, a little clumsy, and so we're going to come in and streamline it, and now this is a great time to do it. First of all, we're going to add that crediting mechanism. We're going to tie it right back into the plan and all the other planning documents. We're going to really examine capacity, because that's really key in impact fee languages, is that the improvements need to be related to capacity. They're not for renewal. They're not for backlog. They're not for maintenance. This fee is also going to kind of become easier to update and a little more stable over time, because as we look at a complete system and a complete plan, it should just move in concert. As development occurs, little pieces of the overall capital picture should go away. And instead of these kind of radical jumps that the past one has as demand units changed or the different levels of investment were changed, kind of made these unpredictable fees, this should create a relatively stable fee over time that's updated by inflation or ENR, or however staff decides it needs to update the fee with to account for increasing construction costs. But overall, it should be a gradual climb, not a zigzag. And lastly, having a third party do it is really going to add a level of defensibility and isolation to the city. When developers or homeowners come and ask you, you can say, look, we decided to hire this out. We had experts do it. This is a defensible fee. This is what these guys do. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ryan, and once he's finished, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ian. And so really the final piece of this is really about where we go from here. And this is, we've reached the end of my presentation, but what I want to say again, just to reiterate, is that this is really the beginning of the public review process in this planning. And we feel that this is really important, because as we go forward, we want to make sure that we did hear correctly, we did cover the issues that need to be covered, and we want to invite not only yourselves, but the entire community to really dig into this plan and provide comments back through either the website, directly contacting Kathy, or we will have a number of opportunities to get this plan out, even on paper, to the library, to some other opportunities where people can really get access to it and provide their comments back by the middle of May. We're trying to work those comments in to then run past the PRAB and the council again in June, and we will be bringing in the meantime some kind of additional material about the financial picture and the fee results that come from that. But really, with that, I want to thank you again. We're really excited about this plan, and we'd love to answer any questions you have initially. If there's something that you're looking for specifically, or any other comments that you'd like to get in. But at this point, I'll turn it back over to you. Okay, we've got a few questions. Councilmember Witt.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who was involved with this. It is so great to have an inventory of everything that we have and where we have blank spots and where we need to work and what's missing. And what it really does is it provides us a framework so that we're not kind of making decisions not at the spur of the moment, but just a year at a time. And so it really breeds out the capriciousness in our funding decisions. So that is really commendable. Now, I understand that currently we have two separate pots of money for new parks and maintenance, correct? Yes. And we are going to continue along that path to make sure that we fund both sides in this scenario that you're recommending, correct?
Yes, I would actually break that a little bit, though, because the funding currently for new parks is tied specifically to very new parks, not just new things in existing parks. And that's one of the distinctions that we're trying to make here, is that there will be new development, which will happen both in existing parks and new parks. There will be maintenance and operations, and then there will be this third piece, which is really the renewal aspect.
Okay. All right. And Now, we didn't go through, in the report, it is very specific about our inventory of parks and which ones need to be revamped and upgraded, and that was very useful information. And again, just a really good job and very useful, timely information. And Harold, thanks for directing staff to do that. You did a really good job. Thank you.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I also wanted to thank the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. They have met every week, every single week, to go over stuff, and that's a lot of time for a volunteer board, so I really appreciate that they've done that. I have a couple of questions. It says, today Longmont has more than 2,350 acres of parks. Does that include all of the parks that homeowners associations have?
No, that would include the publicly owned parkland.
Could perhaps we include where those private parks are? Like, I don't even see Old Mill Park on here. I know it's a historical society, but perhaps those private parks fill in some of those gaps that we think we have, that maybe we really don't have.
So that is a topic that's definitely been under discussion, and I think that some recognition. So what I'm hearing is some recognition of those other pieces. Currently, there is no comprehensive inventory of the homeowner association properties, and so and also there was a conscious decision that because we don't have the authority to change anything there, or necessarily to advertise that the public would have access to them.
Well, and I understand that, I certainly do, but the fact is, a lot of people use those parks because they're close, they're close by. So people will use those little pocket parks a lot. And I love having an inventory of the parks and where they're at, but I really would like to have an inventory of all the parks, which would include the private parks. To me, that's important because it could fill in some holes. And I love the system concept of everything. I think that's awesome. On page, let's see, on my page it's 3-12, page 64. It did talk a little bit about private homeowners association recreation facilities and churches, clarify the level of public access. As far as I know, none of those are actually private, but it would be great to know for sure. And I certainly wouldn't want the city to take those over. I think it's great that we have people who take care of park land that we don't have to worry about. It's awesome. One less thing to worry about. And I am concerned that we charge our developers a big park fee and then also make them have pocket parks. So that has been an ongoing concern of mine. That's like, making them pay for a park and then charging them for other parks. And it just doesn't make sense to me, making them pay twice. So I'm glad that we're looking at being able to directly tell them where their money goes. I think that's a good thing. I also am glad that we included trails and everything because the trails are a big part of our park system. So I'm glad that we've included that, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the report, and I want to thank you for a good job.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. I got a question. I was talking to the city manager earlier this week, and I like the whole concept of completing the system. And I'm glad we moved this first before we went to the next topic, because it's completing the system that has me concerned. While I'm like having a trail around Union, my concern is, are we completing the trails within the city or the trails that we currently already have?
I guess just to reframe that or to push that back to you, are you speaking of, are we
connecting the trails that we have built
okay.
into one uniform system?
Yes. So there are actually two objectives in Connect that kind of hit at that, and one is definitely about making the best use of those existing trails that are out there, because as you're mentioning, or as you're getting at, I believe, the filling those missing gaps is something that not only the community was very excited about, but adds a lot of value to the investment that you've already put on the ground. Right. And the other part of it is about building out the system of connections that is possible and envisioned, and finding the opportunities for that larger interconnected system. So there are kind of multiple pieces of that.
So I remember seeing a map of the trails, excuse me, years ago, and I was liaison on the Parks and Rec board years ago as well, of connections that needed to be done. So I'm sure that there are still connections that need to be done in the interior of the city. So my concern is, okay, if we still have connections that still need to be done in the city, why are we going out further on the borders of town of Dale? Looks like you want to answer that.
Mayor Combs and Mayor Pro Tem Santos, I think we're doing both. And it's really Steve Ransweiler, who is the manager that's overseeing, we call it the missing links, the missing trail connection projects. There are many of those. You'll see those again in your CIP. That's an ongoing effort. And what I'll say about that is there's a reason a lot of those missing links are there. They're not easy. And many of them are either right in the backyards of folks, or they're adjacent to an irrigation ditch that take a while to get agreements put together and those kinds of things. So I don't think we're trying to do one over the other. I think we absolutely understand that the connection and completion of the trail system within the city is a critical need. And I believe that's moving forward. So the question could be, should we delay working out maybe on the fringe, on the exterior portions of that, and try to sort of double up efforts within the city? That's certainly a policy thing the council you should look at with us. But my answer is I think we're doing both. We may not be doing either as fast as the public would like us to do it, but a lot of these missing links are not easy linkages to complete.
Okay. And the other question I have is table 4.2, which is on my packet as far as the draft plan is 4-7, chapter 4. Table 4.2 shows the Union Reservoir interim trail as funded. I just looked at my CIP and I showed it as unfunded.
You and I are policy.
Is that right?
I checked that earlier.
I'm getting to the table, and it's a good question. It's an important distinction to make. That tonight we are talking about the Union Reservoir interim trail, and I'm sorry, is it listed as funded? And we do have, sorry, it's listed as, let me find it. Funded CIP project. So yes, so that's the trail we're talking about tonight, and it does have funding. That's actually a rollover funding from last year. So that you'll also see
for design.
Also for construction, both.
I show, again, I'm looking at PR 10 from the 2013-2017 CIP, and it shows it's unfunded. So I'm confused.
I think it's the carry forward funds, since it's a carry forward.
Mayor Combs and Mayor Pro Tem Santos, the initial phase of that was originally funded in your CIP, I believe in either 2011 or 2012. We have been in discussions. The last time we were in front of you, we went back out to have further discussions to look at the alignment and routing. So the construction of that interim trail is in your CIP. It will be carried forward. We have not initiated either design nor construction at this point. We're still in the planning, really the master planning phase of the Union Trail. And so we haven't moved forward on either design nor construction.
And I guess we'll get into that in just a minute in the next section. So,
Right.
Again, I was just confused because one shows one thing, and then I'm looking at the CIP and showing another. So,
Good question.
And my guess is there's additional funding in the 13-1 to do additional improvements out there.
Thank you.
Sort of in another phase.
Councilmember Levison.
I actually had a couple of comments, something that obviously we can, because of what happened this weekend at the hackathon, there was something really exciting that happened, which would be incredibly useful to link in with this, is a bit of code that was written by some folks that they looked at our bike path and then tried to integrate where places to go would be, and also the easiest routes to get to places, especially if you had inexperienced riders or families with children. And when I saw what the concept of linking parks as a way of having use driven to parks that are already existing, as opposed to building something new, and encouraging that mode of transportation to get there, and how you looked at what basically looking at a point on the map and not considering where there are major crossing points and highways and true accessibility. I thought that was a good perspective. But, you know, if you can connect with staff to look at this extremely cool idea, then, you know, one of those things that you suggested, we actually partially checked off the list this weekend already at the hackathon. Other couple of comments that I guess in your suggestion on plan to action, which is chapter 4, page 11 of the report, you note that some of the other grant programs with, you know, it looks like Great Outdoors Colorado stuff, but also utilizing the Neighborhood Improvement Grant Program to help fund sites. I know that when I was neighborhood leader, I wrote a grant, and the neighborhood implemented a 2-year process to do a master plan for Collier Park, and 10 years later we finally have train-oriented, which is the part closest to the train-oriented playground equipment. But I think that before you leave this in the plan, there is maybe a background assumption that there are organized neighborhoods that are in those parts of the city that can take that mantle of reinvestment and helping decide community priorities are there. And I think that that may not be an assumption you can make and make the statement. But also, in fact, a lot of neighborhoods they have the freedom to choose which proposals they want to submit for the grant funding, and it's a competitive program. So I would be looking at this as maybe more of a flexible kind of piece to the funding option, and that Neighborhood Improvement Fund grant program is also funded at the largesse of the council. So the money that's there in the budget every year could increase or decrease. And I think it would have to go to that group to see whether or not they want to ask council for a dedicated piece that would just go for projects like this, perhaps. But that would be something that the group itself would have to consider. I also like the kind of self-reflection that the plan, it forces into doing, the recommendations force us into doing a lot of self-reflection, that there could be some kind of a new sport that we don't play a lot in this area that might gain in popularity, and to figure out how you can renew resources and reprogram aging infrastructure that's not used anymore. Then I think that's a great point that is certainly something we have to think about. I think I have some concerns around, it seems like every time we're looking at items, we're looking at a sales tax. And we have a lot of sales taxes that don't sunset for a while, and there are a lot of initiatives in our community that people are looking to add sales tax. And at some point, we will have a tax rate that is so extreme that no one will want to come and spend money in Longmont. And we need outside people coming and spending money to support what we use for general fund operations for parks. And the thing is, what happens if the situation is that the electorate decides tax is not the way to do it? You haven't offered a lot of retooling options. If there is no greater tax, I think you're aware of the RTD situation with fast tracks. I don't want the city of Longmont to become RTD in the aspect with parks. And those are my initial comments, and I just like the comprehensive look of this. I also would like to know how we're going to tie this into some other upcoming planning efforts. We've got a lot of balls in the air right now, and so I think it's not your responsibility, but staff's. And I look forward to the additional work. Is there some way that the group doing the economic analysis on the fee could get us the PowerPoint and maybe some of their background assumption work? Because that was a little bit complicated to go through this quickly. So if I could just tap into the consultants to get a little background information, I'd be interested in getting that.
Sure. If you have specific requests, feel free to send them to Kathy, and we'll make sure that you get what you need. But we can definitely make the PowerPoint materials together.
And has this kind of analysis been done for other communities to have this approach?
So in terms of the park development fee specifically,
Yeah.
well, in RPI's experience, there are some unique aspects of this, but they are also building on a lot of expertise here in Colorado doing, as they've described to me, it's all a little bit different each time, but it's based on a really solid methodology that's been tested. And that's probably the most important thing, is that impact fees are only as good as the test that they withstand, and their methodologies have been tested. So,
And have you thrown out any assumptions if the city of Longmont would change its direction completely about the type of expected development we have? Say, for example, we decide around transit areas that we're going to look at 100 or 500 units per acre. How would any changes in policy around density would affect what the triggers would be here, too?
We'll definitely we'll take that back.
Okay.
Councilmember Samori.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. On one of the maps. Sure.
No, go ahead.
No, please.
Go ahead.
So one of the things to talk about the financial aspects that we're looking at now, we're actually engaged in those discussions over the last 2 days. We've been meeting with them, reviewing what we're going to look at. As you look at other options, one of the things, as we fine-tune the numbers on the expense side, there are some things that we can do. One of the most basic is adjust pace, because pace fundamentally will change the dollar values that we will need, but we are scrubbing the expenses on a couple of levels. We are looking at the new projects, because that's really what is, and new meaning new parks or new facilities within existing parks. That's what the impact fee can be utilized there. We're also then having to manage the O&M aspect of the financials and the renewal component. And then, as we talked about today, is how are we going to take a holistic look at this, because while you have two different fee structures, they both are fundamentally seen by the community almost as one. And so we're moving through those discussions to really evaluate, and as we bring the numbers back to council, to present that information, because one of the discussions may very well be pace, and are we talking in a 10-year horizon, a 20-year horizon, or a 30-year horizon? And we're moving through that as we speak.
You answered one of my questions. Thank you. But if we go back to one of the maps that you showed, and you talked about cluster of parks, can you explain that, please?
Sure. So in map 6, which is on page 3.3 for those following along at home, and I can actually flip back to it here real quick just to point out a few of them. Where those come in is really under the distinguish recommendation and talking about the different levels that a park can contribute to identity in this community and to contribute to attraction and that sense of place. And so what we had found through the analysis and through a lot of input from the community, in fact, was that there are some sites that definitely bring together a higher level of that sense of identity and or have that potential. And we had identified those on this map. There are 3, 4, 5, 6 clusters that are identified here, and they are basically focused around clusters of sites that offer kind of the broadest variety of the kind of recognition of the history of the community, the range of recreation and identity kind of activities that go on. They all have the potential to host major community gatherings, so they're a place that the community comes together for events. And one of those that was absolutely a core was the St. Vrain Greenway. And thinking about all of those sites along the Greenway unified in some way, and so that was one of this is kind of a unifying factor. Thinking about these sites together, thinking about Lake McIntosh District Park, Dawson Park, and Flanders Park as part of a larger whole, and in a similar way to that site, thinking about the Union Reservoir as a part of a larger whole, and Sandstone Ranch between the community park and the district park side, again, thinking about them together because they're it's kind of road, I guess, but the sum is more than the individual parts, and we wanted to recognize that and have them be planned for together and thought about together, and the implications they have on each other. So that's the slightly broader version of what that recommendation is about.
Okay, so part of the cost of developing parks or maintaining parks is obviously irrigation. And since we're in a drought situation right now, have we factored in the cost of the irrigation for all these parks, short-term and long-term?
The operation cost is one of as Harold was mentioning, one of the costs that we're continuing to work on. We've been collecting what we really feel is the most complete overall look at the operations costs that the city has really brought together before. And do you want to add to that, Dale?
Yeah, Mayor Combs and Councilmember Smorey, if I understand you right, have we taken into account the cost of getting water to all these parks?
Well, not just the cost of getting the water. Do we have the water available? Or will we have the water available to maintain them? Because if we need to be able to maintain them long term, and we don't have the water to keep them fresh and green, what's the point of building them?
Right. And so the water demand study took into account the build out of the park system. And the primary strategy in that is to use raw water everywhere we can because it's a more efficient delivery typically, and it also allows us to use the original decree. So yes, the water demand study looked at, again, based on the comprehensive plan, the complete build out of the park system.
Okay. And I guess for one, to use a statement that Councilman Bagley uses all the time, one of 7. I would prefer that we double up on completing the links that are missing within the city before we expand on the periphery.
Well, I'd like to make a couple of comments. First, I think you really hit the nail on the head when you recognize the fact that the trail links aren't just transportation corridors, but that is the recreation piece. I mean, if you see the families and kids using the trail around McIntosh Lake and the St. Vrain River Trail, it's obviously that is the recreation. It's not just... But it's also a great transportation piece. When I take my car in to get fixed, I can take the trail all the way out, drop it off, ride my bike back, come up Airport Road. So it's good for both. But, the key thing is that the recreation is pretty neat. I guess in response to Alex's remark, I think you should always build the easy stuff first. And if it's really hard to make these trail connections because it's going to take years to get some of the right-of-ways, and it's really easy to do something else that's going to get a big bang for the buck sooner, I would do that. That's my one vote of 7. So, I guess Councilmember Witt.
Just a response to that, if you continue to do that, there will always be easier projects to do, and the important links will never get done.
Okay, I guess that there's no more questions. Thank you, Russ. That was a great presentation. Excuse me.
Yeah, just a quick question. Say again. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Just going back to the pools. There's a section in there about there's a section in there about what we've got, and so and there's a section in there about taking out the island at Centennial, which I don't think will work because it's like to do a flip turn you need more than this much on the wall of water. So my question is, did you have the opportunity to explore it all? I mean, I know that there's future rec centers planned, but did we look at all about what type of pools? I mean, in statistics, the problem is queuing. So, like, it's not that you need enough line space to accommodate the average. It's just that you need to make sure that when we hit peak hours, that we have the space. And so, my question is, did you look at that at all?
So we did. One of the other team members who's not in front of you today is Ken Ballard from Ballard King, who are national experts on all kinds of indoor recreation facilities, but particularly around pools, and spent some quality time with your pool staff and your recreation division staff around the challenges and limitations of that pool in particular, and just kind of the overall pool situation. That is, and really any improvement at Centennial Pool, to my understanding of his opinion on that, is a stopgap measure at best. That pool as a whole is outmoded and is going to continue to be a challenge to operate, in a effective and efficient manner. And so it's something that definitely prompted the recommendation in this plan to think seriously about the impacts on existing facilities when and if building new major facilities, because if a additional facility was built that served any of the purpose that you're aiming for, that pool is currently serving, I believe that the use of that facility would fall off to a level that just wouldn't be supportable. And that's
what do you mean?
I think that it would essentially draw off enough of the demand that it would cause the investment in that pool to become too much.
I guess my concern, I guess my other thought is, I swim every morning at Centennial for 2 hours. I'm very familiar with the water system here in the city, and I guess so I come from a selfish standpoint here. I guess what I'm even asking is not even building a new facility. I guess my question is, we've got a rec center that's not used. The lanes are too narrow for competitive workouts. So I just want to know that, have we looked at the queuing? I mean, what's going on with the lanes? What's going on with the swimming? And what I'm seeing is not much. So that's my first question. The one thing I'd like on council isn't fracking. It's not tomorrow. I want my pool. This week. So, and then the other thing is, I would ask what I would like to see. This is very in depth, great. Come June. The one thing I don't like about all consultants in general, including myself when I do consulting, is I want answers. I want answers, meaning that, if you're going to go out and sell a business, for example, and you're going to do due diligence, I can tell all the clients it's always the same questions. Well, but at the end, I want to know the answers to those questions. What are the actual priorities? What is the plan? What are we going to do? And give us something we can sink our teeth into, rather than, you got to figure out the following: A, B, C, D, and E. I don't want that. I'd like to see, here are our recommendations. Do A, B, C, D, and here's how you accomplish it. And then we can disagree with what your recommendations are, but I don't want to be left in June with just, okay, now we have one more project and one more plan that we throw on the shelf. Nobody reads it. I'm lazy. I want to be, you guys are the experts. I want to know, what do we do?
So if I can jump in, I think that was actually the discussion that we had yesterday as we met with them, and that was, I think, comments that several staff members made. We see what you're saying, but we want to know what your opinion is and your recommendation in this, because we said essentially the same thing. You're the experts. And so they're working on that. In terms of the pool, I will also say there was a discussion, and part of the analysis on that is really as they continue to move forward on the rec component of the plan, that's where a lot of that's really going to come in really understanding the economics of what would it take to adjust, make improvements to Centennial, what's the value of those improvements over time, how does that relate to, do we need if we had a new one, what's the life cycle of a new one, and what would the impact be? What would the impact be if you had another one in Cap Centennial? What we're seeing now is it's probably telling us that it would completely drain usage there. So then we would have an operational expense that we wouldn't necessarily want, or wouldn't make sense financially. So that's part of the analysis that they're actually moving through as we continue looking on the rec side, and then as we can morph it, what we talked about, was it yesterday? About how we build that into the prioritization process that we're looking at from a budgeting standpoint. I think that's where we'll see things come together. I guess that captures our conversation.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you very much.
Let's take a 10-minute recess before we start the next.
All right. Now it's your turn.
seats. We'll try to get the show back on the road. Kate, you want to introduce the next item?
You bet. We will go now to item 4A, Union Reservoir Trail Preferred Alignment. And Kathy Cron will again introduce this item.
Hello again, Mayor and City Council members. Now we're gonna work into this Union Reservoir Trail presentation, and again, I'm Kathy Crone, Project Manager with the Natural Resources Division, and for this one I'm here with Alta Planning Design. We have Josh and Brett with Alta Planning and Design that we've been working with on this project. And I think, you know, we heard some important input at the beginning of the meeting. I'll go ahead and go through the presentation, see what questions are answered, and then we can, if there's still lingering questions regarding what we've heard, we can come back to that. So first I'll kind of start with some background. The vision for a trail at Union Reservoir goes back quite a ways. We have the 1989 original Recreation Master Plan back when it was referred to as Calkins Lake. And that's where we first start to see the vision for a loop trail out at Union Reservoir. And I think I can control it. And then in 2007, a more recent recreational master planning effort was also embarked upon, which also looks at a loop trail around the reservoir. This one starts to look at the future potential expansion of the reservoir in the recreational master plan, and then this one fed into the 2012 recreational master plan that was adopted in February of 2012. And again, it's an important distinction that the trail in the master plan and the master plan itself is designed around the future expansion of the reservoir. So upon adoption of that plan, staff was requested to look into some of the potential recreational opportunities that could occur prior to reservoir expansion, since that's such a long-term vision for the area. So with that, since it's a much different trail, so you know, we don't want to build a trail that's far beyond the future water line. That would put it into private property, agricultural lands, and well beyond the existing reservoir. So this was considered an interim trail option where we would try to stay on public lands, city-owned lands, Union Reservoir property, and any easements or right-of-ways that could be utilized to allow this recreational opportunity to occur prior to. So with that, since it is a different trail, we did see the need to go out and do a full public process and a full design process for that. So we're coming back tonight with the results of that process and a recommendation. So with that effort, the first thing we wanted to do is to put together some project goals and objectives, and we did that with the community. So we did this through a public meeting to develop some common goals and objectives, so we were sort of heading toward the same goal with this project. So I'll just go through them. They were to provide a primary greenway trail that connects to the Spring Gulch No. 2 trail, which is currently being designed to minimize environmental impacts, to create a non-fee trail and keeping the existing fee area at Union Reservoir intact, to maintain and enhance existing recreational uses, to minimize agricultural impacts, and to explore opportunities for anything that could be permanent out there. And of course to provide an all-inclusive public process, and to utilize public lands, easements, and right-of-way, and also to offer a cost-effective trail alignment. It's low maintenance and but still provides access for emergency vehicles and enforcement. And then, of course, there's an assumed goal, which we noticed wasn't written down, but it was prevalent throughout, is to provide the safest route possible, is always on our minds. The environmental study, and I don't want to, the slide's kind of shortened, but the environmental sensitivities out at Union Reservoir are very important. They were important during the master plan effort, and they've been an important part of the discussion through this planning effort. With the master plan study, we brought in environmental consultants to do a preliminary assessment to guide the master plan. And so we brought them back on board to look more in depth at those preliminary analysis and give us more detailed, specific recommendations for this trail. So with the more updated studies, they had indications of wildlife species of special concern or state threatened and endangered species. They went back out, and at this time, none of those species are found. And those include, bald eagles. There's a leopard frog, Ute lady stresses orchid. There were 2 more that were looked at, so there were 5 species, the burrowing owl. So they were all looked for. And of course, you see bald eagles out there, but they were specifically looking for nesting habitat. So at this time, none of those are found. The wetlands, those were specifically delineated and confirmed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the jurisdictional wetlands, so that we can be aware of where they are and we stay out of them wherever possible. There might be some minimal crossings where a ditch comes in. And then with regards to raptor nests and waterfowl, there is an osprey on a man-made platform at the north side of the reservoir, so that is present, and they've come back this year. So we'll be aware of that and follow the recommendations surrounding construction and things like that have to be mitigated within the quarter-mile radius. And then also some important western and Clark's Greaves nesting habitat is along that northeast shore. So there's recommendations in the report regarding how to buffer and how to screen that habitat and how far to keep the trail away. So we're following the recommendations in that. Hang on one second, I want to catch up. And then the public process. So this really began. It's been going on for about a year, and this kind of lines out what we've gone through. We've had 6 stakeholder meetings, and stakeholders included neighbors, recreational clubs, neighboring agencies, the counties, Department of Transportation, the Colorado Parks or Division of Wildlife. And then they were also involved in a technical advisory team that we could vet the alternatives against. And then we also had 5 public meetings, which included workshops, open houses, as well as picnic table chats. And I would say that, the neighbors were invited not only to stakeholder meetings, which were focused on their specific needs and input, but they were also invited to the public meetings. We had one focus group meeting, which was that demographically representative resident feedback panel that's been selected for the city to bounce some projects off of. And then we've also kept all the information up to date on the project website. We've had public comment periods not only for all the alternatives, when all the alternatives were being looked at, but also when the recommendation came out. We went to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and I do want to note that they certainly recommended approval or supported the recommendation. The council communication says unanimously, but there was one dissenting vote, so I just wanted to clarify that in the council communication. And then we did also go to the water board, and they also supported the project. Things they want us to pay attention to are maybe some educational opportunities surrounding the fact that it's a water source, not just a recreational and wildlife mecca out there. I think through the public process, that's what we talk about, but they wanted to support some, interpretation or educational opportunities surrounding that, as well as focus on erosion control and drainage throughout construction to make sure that's handled appropriately since it's a water source. And then to get to some of the input, it was certainly widely varied. There's not only support for the loop trail, there was also support for an out and back trail. The unifying thing was support for minimizing impacts, so that was a continuous focus on all of the alternatives and recommendation. There is certainly excitement for trails in this area, this side of town, things kind of taper off right now at Stephen Day Park until we get going on the Spring Gulch number 2 trail and this trail. So, I think the feeling of it, town's getting pretty close. And so continuing trail efforts in this side of town is pretty exciting to some, but then to others, this area is really viewed as rural, as a place for the wildlife, and to keep it that way. So I just wanted to recognize that certainly there's that balance in the input that we heard. And then also bringing forth the no dogs recommendation into the process. Certainly people were very, very varied on that recommendation. And also this might be a good spot to talk about the, you can see the dots on that slide. And at no meeting did we really do any voting or anything like that. So what we did with that exercise is we, like what was talked about, we had yellow dots and yellow dots in this exercise were on the map itself was don't like that trail. The blue dots were for that trail. So you can see how it was unbalanced. And I just want to recognize that at that meeting, staff didn't do a very good job explaining the exercise. So our intention, we had the trail into 4 quadrants so that we could look closely at the alternatives. And our intention was to place 1 dot on the trail you liked most and 1 different colored dot on the trail you liked least. So there should have been just 1 dot for each. Whereas I think it was interpreted as I'm going to place a dot on every trail I don't like and in each part of the trail I don't like. So I think it was just a misunderstanding on that. So it was hard to just count the dots. And yes, go ahead.
But yellow dots mean don't like. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. So the issue was that multiple dots got placed by the same participant. So that was why it was kind of hard to take it as a vote, because really there were only, I think, 23 people at that meeting and many more dots than that. So that's just an explanation of what you heard there. I see counting, so I'll hold on. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Josh to he's going to walk you through the alternatives in the most efficient way he can and get you to the preferred recommendation, and then we'll see what questions you still have.
Thanks, Kathy. Josh Manlin with Alta Planning and Design. My address is 4553 Newton Street, Denver, Colorado. So this is an overall map of the alignment alternatives that we looked at. And in all, there are probably 7 alternative alignments we looked at. So I'll increase the size so you guys have a better view. So we divided it into 2 quadrants to look at. And so we looked at the north half and the south half to look at each alternative. So this is the north half. This map shows all the alignments that we looked at on the north half, and it also looks at some of the opportunities and constraints that are along those alternatives in the project study area. This is the south area. And as you can see in the north half, there are more constraints and opportunities, but there are also more opportunities for alignments. So that's why you see more in the north half. But in the south half, there's a little bit less opportunities for alignments. But so these are just the alternatives we look at throughout the process. And I'll start with the black and white alignments. And we've highlighted each alignment so it's a little easier to look at. And also we've provided photos as we move along the trail. And for ease of walking through the alignments, I'm going to start at Jinhan Pond, which is on the west side there. So as you can see, in this alternative, we looked at starting on the west side and then crossing over. And I'm going to go from the west along the north and down to the east and south. So we looked at a possible alternative of doing an at-grade crossing at County Road 28 and then going on the north side of the road. And as you kind of move left to right, you can see the images. So some of the opportunities and constraints that we encounter on the north side with the black alignment are some wetlands, at-grade crossing, and then also driveway crossings. Those are some of the major things we have to look at. And then also drainage. And this alignment primarily stays in the right-of-way. And what we looked at when we did some investigation with Weld County is that there's a platted in probably 1901 or 1910 10 in that area, platted right away 60 feet. So currently there's about a 25-foot drive surface out there. Some is improved, some is not. But so if that road is actually built on the center line, we're probably looking at 15 feet of area on either the south or north side of the located trail. So by staying in the right of way, we have to think of drainage and then borrow ditches that are along there to handle the drainage off the road. And so that some of the constraints along there are that right of way, and then also like some of the public talked about, is there a fair amount of traffic and some people that are going pretty quickly. So we really have to think about where that trail falls. And if this alignment were a preferred alignment is picked, we'd also think about having a 50-foot corridor that we surveyed, so we would know where the actual right-of-way is. So we would have to look at that. And as we move towards County Road, County Road 3. We stay on the north side. There's a few driveway crossings. We understand that those are issues that would have to be signed, both for vehicles and pedestrians. So providing safety along that trail corridor is important. And then as we get down to County Road 3, we cross, do an at-grade crossing, and get onto the west side of the road there. We'd stay on the east side of the road and then come down to the south and then again stay on the north side of County Road 28. And this alignment here, again, some of the constraints are we would have a driveway crossing. So every time the trail would go along there, you would have a driveway crossing to contend with. And then you would go past the residence on the south side, and then another at-grade crossing, signed, of course, for safety, and then follow along the trail. But in this option, we kept the trail on the outside of the recommended wildlife buffer for the western grebes and other nesting habitat along there. So that's about 300 feet from waterline was the recommended the buffer we stayed at. And so as we go to the south, again outside, the other impact here is agricultural impact. So as you can kind of see on the lower right photo, this would be impacting some of the agricultural practices that are occurring now. And on the left side of that photo is kind of the edge of wetlands, and the rest is active agricultural practices. So that would be an impact that we would incur on this alignment here. As you went to the south, we would kind of steer back out of the agricultural practices and closer to the lake. Again, so then we would kind of go on the east side of the sailing club and then an at-grade crossing. But again, we purposely moved the at-grade crossing about 250 foot to the east of that turn, so there is good sight distances. And then we also try to do that all at-grade crossings in the most visible locations, so trying to provide a safe crossing. And then from there, again, trying to minimize impact to agricultural practices, staying fairly close to the road and into the right-of-way there, all the way along the south. And then all the way basically to the ARC Remote Control Car Center. So that kind of goes from the black to the white, and then at that point we would get on the Spring Gulch number 2 trail, and then go up on the south side of the oligarchy ditch. And then at a potential future trailhead location. That was one of the things we had to look at, is there are possible trailhead locations that were looked at in the overall master plan, and then what are probably phase 1 potential projects. So this is a potential project because there could be two trail alignments that would be in this area. And then also, that's a city-owned property, and there'll be a separated grade crossing that would occur there with the Spring Gulch number 2, so that would be under County Road number 1. And so that was the black and white alignment, and then the next is a red and white alignment. So we went through the white alignment, so I'm going to focus on the red alignment. The main difference between this and the red and the black alignment is that the red, again, if we started at Jim Hand Pond, we would move an at-grade crossing to 17th, where there is some controlled vehicular. So there's a stop sign on 17th as it T-bones into Well County Road 1. And so that would be a good crossing because there is some control there, and if there was future improvements, there's none planned for now, but in future development, that could be a good at-grade crossing for pedestrians. But again, staying in the right-of-way on Well County Road 1, which is about 60 feet dedicated right now, as you move up along the east side and to Well County Road 28, again, to minimize, it was a very tight piece along the south side of Well County Road 28 there, So we move again the trail on the north side up around to the curve there, and again staying out of the northwest cove there. Wetlands go right up to the right-of-way there, so we were trying to minimize that impact there. And then again, as we kind of get to an area where there's a little more space for a trail alignment, we cross the road to the south. And again, what this does is it minimizes impacts on neighbors and driveway crossings. So as you move all the way along the trail alignment, there is no driveway impacts. And then the only impacts we have to wetlands are where there are ditch crossings or feeder ditches along there. And typically the visitor experience will be a little bit nicer on the south side of the reservoir, just because you are closer to the reservoir. Again, there are some minor wetland impacts as you move to the along to the east there, and then as you get to Well County Road 3, again we have purposely moved the trail down to the south and engage the reservoir a little more to increase visitor experience along that trail alignment. Again, being careful not to impact wetlands, but as you can see, as you go to the south of the neighbors, there's 3 neighbors. There's a little bit of a tight spot there, but we're on Union Reservoir property and not really impacting wetlands based on the delineation study. In this study on the northeast side, we chose not to impact the agricultural practices there, so we dove inside and stayed on the Union Reservoir property where agricultural practices are not occurring. Go ahead.
I do want to point out this photo is really useful because even this red alignment trail is really out here. So a little bit of the agriculture is encroaching into the Union Reservoir property. So even though we're recommending this alignment is on Union Reservoir property, it doesn't mean that it's in the habitat. There is still room to stay outside of the habitat. The agriculture, by saying we're not impacting agriculture, we're not impacting the lease because the lease is sort of going beyond right now. So that's kind of an explanation for that.
And the other thing to kind of point out here is that we kind of, in this option, we wanted to show more of a little vegetative buffer, enhance the vegetations along that edge there, both medium and low vegetation. It was kind of a recommendation that was in the wildlife study to help with the nesting grebes and other waterfowl that are nesting in those wetlands. So in an option where we do move the trail closer, we're thinking about an environmental impact. So how can we minimize that impact as we bring it in there? So again, there's kind of trade-offs with each trail alignment. As you get to the south, it really kind of takes on the black alignment too, and then the white alignment in all options are the same as you move to the south of the reservoir. So I'm not going to go through those completely again. The next alignment we want to show is basically the white alignment, and this is the out and back alignment we were tasked to look at. And again, this would start at Jim Hand Ponds, and the other option for a trailhead would be something closer to the actual fee area entrance of Union Reservoir right now. But for the sake of going through the alignment is basically starting along 17th and going a little bit north, and then to the actual east and heading out to a possible viewing point there for the Northwest Cove. We know a lot of people are stopping along County Road 28 right now, so providing another option for wildlife viewing. And then basically following the white alignment south, you can kind of see the other, again, that point there where Kathy is, we know that's an area we're going to have to work with neighbors to get the trail through there, and then basically staying all along Union Reservoir property through here. And as you get to the south, at the top of the page there, that's the one trail easement that the city has worked over time to get, and it's a 20-foot trail easement, so we know we would need to stay in that area as we move through that private property. In this option, we kept the trail pretty close to the fee area, just for sake of not impacting the agricultural practices there, but also allowing people to stay close to the reservoir. And then it actually kind of loops back out to hook up with the Spring Gulch number 2 alignment, and this is where we'd probably have to provide a bridge or a culvert to get across. And then as Kathy's shown, as we move along the Spring Gulch number 2 trail towards the entrance to Union Reservoir fee area, that's where another possible trailhead could be located with an out and back facility like this. Again, the white alignment pretty much stays to what we were showing, staying on Union Reservoir property, but all along that south area there is some slope there. We know we would have to do some sort of facility that allows drainage to occur, so the trail is usable throughout the year. And this would actually go up to, again, the same type of crossing on 2026 near the Union Sailing Club, but then it would go up to kind of a viewing area kind of halfway up the page there, and that would be kind of an out and back possibility. So that was another alignment we looked at. The fourth alignment is a combination of a couple. It's the red, the yellow, and the white alignment. The red alignment is basically the same as we talked about before. The major difference here is as we get to County Road 3, we would keep the yellow alignment would stay in the close to the right-of-way there. So it's trying not to get too close to the reservoir, going in front or the north side of the properties there. Again, dealing with 3 roadway crossings, as you can see in the photos. And then also, as we got to a kind of a natural feature or a high point in the topography there, we would take it to the south, and that would be on the west side of 3 properties there, and it would run along an irrigation ditch. We'd have to figure out a way to get the irrigation to flow downhill. There's definitely ways to have level spreaders and stuff like that. But again, finding a natural feature to follow along a ditch and then following along service road there where Kathy is going, and there's an option here to either go to the west and get on the red alignment and go south, or you can stay on what is the current, as you can see, an electrical or a telephone pole easement along with another ditch. So looking at a service road where we could double up as a trail. So looking at some existing infrastructure here. Again, some of the cons of that are we'd have to deal with agricultural practices and Excel trucks as well. So again, we would get to County Road 26 and then move to the west along that right-of-way. And then again, hook into the white alignment and follow all the way around like we did in previous examples. So that's the yellow, red, and white alignment. The next one is a purple alignment. So again, the red and the yellow are pretty similar to what you've seen. This one, instead of going south, where Kathy is there, we continue east to County Road 5, and again, follow along so back up really quick, Kathy, sorry. At the residence there on that top right photo, that'd be a tough constraint. There's an existing irrigation ditch and some driveway crossings. So again, look at the existing infrastructure and what that entails to put a trail along there. But as you move to the east, pretty clear, pretty nice grove of cottonwoods. Actually, you could take advantage of a gallery of cottonwoods. And as you move to the south, stay into the right of way there. There's a battery site that we'd have to cross from a natural gas well. So that would be one driveway crossing. And then again, as we get a little bit to the south, we encounter a railroad. So we would have to look at a railroad right-of-way easement as well as we get to that portion of the trail. And you can kind of see that coming from the northeast. And as you get to the south portion of it, again, kind of following along the railroad easement and also the right-of-way easement. Again, you hear as you get to the south, there's an existing telephone pole easement that we'd have to talk to, whether it's Excel or whatever power company. We'd have to work with them on getting an easement or at least an allowance to put a trail along there. And as you move to the west there are some pretty nice views of the lake from the high point there where Kathy is kind of there. That's kind of a break point in the topography. So there are some really nice perspectives along this alignment as well. But again, tying into the yellow alignment there and then following the white alignment all the way around back to the north side. And then just a couple other small segments we looked at. We call them the orange segments or the leftover segments. Other ways to get off the county roads. People are running on the county roads now, and we think that's a pretty dangerous thing to do. So if we can get them off the roadways, I think that's what we're trying to do. But some on the east side, there was a ditch, irrigation ditch we could follow along there and hook into either the yellow or the red alignment. And then over on the west side, towards the northern piece of it, there was one small segment we looked at as well, connecting in there. No, right there. Yeah, exactly. Just through an existing agricultural field and along existing gas well road is another way to look at it. And then again, on the south portion, there was one towards the fee area. We looked at pushing the fee area fence back there to allow them to get closer to the reservoir there. But what we found is that you have to have two at-grade crossings, so it's not a very safe option. And then one other option was moving the trail further away from the fee area on the northwest piece. And those are kind of the existing segments that we looked at. And then I think that's the main piece of it. The next is kind of the preferred alignment, and I think, as you can see on the board and also here, is starting at Jim Hand Ponds. We thought it was to decrease the number of people crossing County Road 1 was probably the best option. So, keeping everybody on the east side on the reservoir side, staying within the right of way there. And as you move to the north, you would be on the north side of County Road 28 with an at-grade crossing. And then to minimize the impact along the wetlands on the northwest cove, follow that around through on the right of way there, a couple of driveway crossings, and then an at-grade crossing further to the east, and then get them onto the south side where the reservoir is. And so, and then kind of moving them throughout that whole southern side of the Weld County Road 28. All the way along there to minimize driveway crossings, and also dipping them down a little bit into that piece there by minimizing, but also minimizing wetland impacts. And then instead of having 3 driveway crossings, keeping them south of the private property owners there, and then along keeping and minimizing agricultural impacts, but also providing an enhanced buffer along the northeast cove there, and then staying on Union Reservoir property to the south. And then also, as we move to the south again, keep them close to the Union Reservoir to increase the trail user experience and minimizing impact to agricultural practices. But as we move to an at-grade crossing, we want to increase the visibility for both pedestrians and vehicles. So moving that crossing to the east about 200 or 300 feet. And then again, hugging going to the west a bit, and then hugging along the agricultural practices, trying to minimize that. And then again, hooking up to Spring Gulch number 2, and following that up to where the crossing would be of the Oligarchy Ditch, and then to the east, closer to the fee area, and then all the way up to the north there. And then I'm going to, and also the trailhead, thanks. We're showing the trailhead because that actually can fall on either side of the road, just because there's city-owned property on either side. So that could happen on the east or west side. And then, again, a good place for a trailhead just because there is an at-grade crossing of a pretty busy road. And then, one thing to mention, as you get to the north of 17, the volume of traffic decreases significantly. So you're losing a lot of traffic there. So if there would have to be an at-grade crossing, that would not be a bad place to do it. And then I want to turn it back over to Kathy to finish up. Thanks.
Yeah, so I just want to bring it back now that you've seen the alignment itself. I wanted to note some of the policy, use, and design recommendations that sort of go along with this alignment. And really, I'm just noting modifications to existing policies. So we're not going to go through all the policies, but I just wanted to note some that might be in question. We would recommend a stay-on-trail policy with this trail, and that's primarily to protect the sensitive wildlife areas and also to avoid potential trespassing since we're on near agricultural lands and private lands. Also recommending a no dogs policy on this, because of the sensitive wildlife areas. So dogs would be allowed on the Spring Gulch number 2 trail, and then we would recommend as you peel off onto the loop to have a no dogs policy. Also, I wanted to note crusher fine surfacing. We may be all on the same assumption, but since our primary greenway trails are usually concrete, that would be a modification to our standards. So I wanted to note that is what we would be recommending for this trail. And then also noting some existing policies to remain. The fishing regulations, we would try to keep them intact. So right now, shoreline fishing is allowed within the existing park boundaries. So we would want to promote that. And again, that goes along with the stay-on-trail policy so that we're not getting that off-trail impacts all the way around the reservoir. Also, equestrian use is sort of an interesting topic, and we're getting feedback on both sides of that. But we do have equestrian use, like say on the St. Vrain Greenway Trail, and so we do think it's a compatible use for this trail, so recommending that for this trail. Again, the fee area would remain as is, and the hours for our Greenway trails the 1 hour before sunrise to 1 hour after sunset. We wouldn't recommend any changes to that. And then also to address potential trail closures. The raptor nests, we would just need to work with the Division of Wildlife. They do make recommendations. There's sort of things that you have to work out with them. The quarter-mile buffer for construction, we would certainly adhere to. That's part of the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So we would follow those buffers, the radiuses for construction, but then we would have to work with them on how close the trail can get to any active nests. They observe the reaction to the birds from how close that is. So that's sort of not a must or a have to, but sort of an ongoing communication that we need to have. And then again, with regards to agricultural practices, that's similar, where we need to have continuous communication with the agricultural tenants. We have good examples of trails adjacent to or in concert with ag in this area. The St. Vrain Greenway Trail is a good example where the closures are pretty minimal, but we do work with the ag tenant if there's spraying going on or something like that to get out a 48-hour notification, and usually those closures are pretty brief to accommodate those uses. And then also the environmental recommendations that came from Walsh Environmentals, who did our study and made the recommendations in their study. We're really going to have minimal wetland impacts, and it's hard to show at the scale that we have to show it. We certainly wanted to show the wetlands, but because of the scale of the trail on this plan is probably 30 feet wide, so it's hard to show where we're really in them, but Josh tried to circle them on some of the plans. So really our real goal is to stay out of the wetlands, but also stay out of we're skirting that line of minimizing impacts to neighbors and ag, but also staying out of the wetlands. So that's really what we're trying to do. And then to protect the Northwest Cove. So not only did they recommend a buffer from the actual nesting habitat, but they also had some recommendations that went beyond that to say if the trail is within that buffer, you can provide screening. If you have a good visual screen, that can also protect that nesting habitat. And then protect the nesting habitat in the northeast, that's where I was. Oh, and the Northwest Cove. Sorry, the Northwest Cove is fully wetlands. So you'll notice that we didn't really even go there with the trail alignments. We didn't feel that it was appropriate to impact that. That's really pretty sensitive wildlife habitat, and we just didn't feel it was appropriate. So that's where we work into the right-of-way, and we bump the trail out over there. So we're also the osprey nest. We are working with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Division to relocate that. They have recommended a location. It was moved to the location it's at now by them, so we're working with them to move it back to the original location. We can't move it fully a quarter mile away from the proposed trail because we want them to re-nest. So they can recommend locations where we're going to serve the osprey, but also get it a little bit further away from the human impacts that may occur. And then again, some of the environmental recommendations that come through are through the Stay on Trail and the No Dog policies. And then also, we would recommend some wildlife viewing areas, and that kind of helps protect the wildlife habitat in that we can provide nice nodes for people to get the views that they're after and get the birding that they're after in key locations that protect the wildlife, so that we can bring them to those locations and they don't feel like they need to go beyond and really get into those areas. So that came through in the environmental report as a recommendation. And one of the areas on the north side, we may be able to work with a bump out on the road. A lot of people park along the road and get out of their cars and look into that Northwest Cove. So we may be able to provide some pull-offs or things like that to make it safer for people and provide that opportunity that they're really seeking out at Union Reservoir. And I think that's all I had with the presentation. And I feel like there's probably going to be some questions that weren't answered. So I'll leave that to you guys to touch on what you'd like to touch on.
Councilman Samari.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. So I'm going to cut to the chase. We've heard from the residents around the lake, not once but multiple times. And one of the arguments that we hear for not avoiding going behind their properties is potentially the added cost of building the trail. But the way I look at it is we're going to put a temporary trail right now that eventually is going to get, some sections of it are going to get flooded and we're going to have to rebuild it. What is the cost of that section that's going to get flooded? And could we just not build that currently, okay, and just build enough of the trail so that people can still enjoy going around the lake? And then eventually when we flooded, we can build the rest of the trail and go around the homes as opposed to behind them to where we're invading their privacy.
Sure, there's kind of two parts to the question, and really the entire recommended trail would fall under the future water line. So there isn't just a piece of it, it's really the entire recommended trail in this trail alignment would be underwater in the future expansion. And then with that recommendation on where those three neighbors are, we certainly looked hard at all of the alternatives in that area. And really it came back to the goals and objectives for the trail, and safety being one of them, is in that we did feel that we could mitigate the impacts. We could stay on Union Reservoir property, provide enough of a buffer to provide a good trail experience and also minimize impacts, but also create a safe trail experience where you're not crossing driveways. Expense certainly came into it, that we wanted to provide a economical trail alignment, and there would be a significant amount of structural changes that would have to happen in order to put the trail along the road in that area. So those were all taken into consideration.
But it could be done.
It could be done.
Okay.
I guess I'd like to ask a couple of questions. What is the real likelihood that we would ever expand the Union Reservoir when we can't even fill it with water, last year or this year? And with the Windy Gap Firming project going forward and getting that federal approval, is it even likely that we would ever expand it?
So Mayor Combs, that would be the ultimate question. And so what we have always recommended to you from a water supply perspective is that until we actually have a permit for a Windy Gap Firming project, that you keep all of your options available. In other words, don't shortchange an option prior to knowing that for sure you've got that. And then fortunately, the Windy Gap project is still in that permitting phase, and I honestly can't sit here tonight and say definitively will it be permitted. Well, as we all know, many projects have been denied. Once we achieve and realize a permit, I would think we would come back to you, and then likely what could happen out at Union at that point is let's say Windy Gap gets permitted, we stay in the project at the level that we're currently at and that we can afford it because the costs are going up on that project. Then the expansion of Union would take a different tone. In other words, we would not necessarily need to raise it 13 feet. We might do an interim raise of maybe only 5 feet. The investment and the value that the city has in Union, however, and in the enlargement decree that we got through the court system in the 1980s, I hold as a very valuable asset for the community. And so I wouldn't recommend making that decision prematurely to not do it. Okay. There are many cities that would love to have the reservoir that we have, and in fact, there could be partners that would partner with us on that project at some point in the future. But It's a long answer for the
Right.
question, but
Okay,
do I
here
think
is-
the reservoir could be expanded in the future? Yes, I do.
Okay, here's my second part of the question, because it always comes down to people who are worried about flooding this trail. Well, what is the typical life of a crusher fine trail anyway? I mean, if we got 15 years of good life out of it for, $900,000, wouldn't that be a great investment, even if we did have to? Because, I mean, eventually, it only has a certain lifetime anyway. And would we be filling this thing? I mean, let's say we decide that we're going to fill this thing. First off, how do we fill it if we don't have the water to fill it with right now? But anyway, what is the life of a crusher fine trail?
So I'm not the expert on the life of the trail, but what I would say is the expansion of Union is still a longer term proposition, and I would think you would have many years, if not decades, of use of that trail by the public prior to the inundation of it. And then that, ultimately, Mayor, that's sort of a calculus for folks to try to decide. Is that an investment that's worth it? In other words, is the value of it worth it? Or is it something to defer until a future time?
Okay. And I guess my final question horses on the trail. I mean, I love horses and stuff, but couldn't that increase the maintenance costs? Because, horses are heavy and sometimes they walk when the trail is soft and put big inputs. And I mean, so I don't know if we need to make that decision tonight. I mean, I'm kind of for it, but I also am concerned about the maintenance costs. But, one of my concerns is I was heavily involved with McIntosh Lake because we were citizens at the time, went to the community meetings, and at the time, people that lived on that lake said, oh, it's going to decrease the value of our property, crime's going to increase, and all these negative things are going to happen. And, none of those negative things happen. That trail runs 60 feet behind people's houses over there, and I just see the hundreds and hundreds of people using that every weekend. People like going around trails. We're wired to climb to the top of mountains, to go around trails. It's kind of in our DNA. We don't like to go halfway around and then back. It's like we don't feel like we've completed something, a goal, unless you go around a trail. That's just my opinion on, if we have to change the loop to make it happen. But I think, in my opinion, the trail should be a loop. But anyway, Councilmember Bagley.
I wasn't next. Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I was going to prepare my thoughts for a little bit, but I guess I respect the mayor's opinion, and as well as all council members. I guess I'm a little confused. I thought we already decided that we were going to do a U or a J trail. Didn't we talk about that? Vote on it? Told them, send them. Yeah. Okay. All right. I guess the things that over the last, I've been able to walk it. I've swam at Union since we voted on the Union thing. I know, don't say that, but I did. I've camped at Union, and then I walked all the way around. Larry French, while I was out there, I parked my car and even backed into it and damaged my new car. So basically, I'm going to be voting for the trail because he ruined my car. No, just kidding. I've talked with Larry French. I've talked with Ron Dick. I've had a chance to go out there and kind of get eyes on. I guess I'm looking for a win-win for everybody, and I'm a big fan of the U Trail or the J Trail, and the reason is if you go up to the northwest, you've got property owners, and we're going to have to get the trail around their property or through their property. To the far north, you've got the wetlands and also homes where we're not going to be 60 feet from their home. It's literally going, there's the back porch, you've got 15, 20 feet to the water, and then you've got, backyard. So you're going to have to put a trail between people's homes and the habitat. Then the big concern I have is Larry French, God bless him. You got combines and pesticides all along that northeast and eastern section of the lake, and going around it doesn't really make sense. We've got roads. If you want to go hike roads, you can do that now without spending a dime. But going along that eastern section, you're dealing with agriculture. And so I'm thinking in terms of all that the northeast to the northwestern area, you've got problems you've got agriculture and people and private property all meeting, and it just doesn't seem to me that it's a good way to interact with our neighbors. Then you throw in horses and children and people who ignore the dog laws. I mean, I can picture the parade of horribles in my mind, especially when in 10 to 15 years, we might flood the reservoir and build a trail anyway. We'd have to buy out the neighbors, and a lot of these concerns just kind of leave. So I just kind of look at it as, why don't we do the right where the 20-foot trail easement all the way down to the south of the French lease? Why don't we just do that in the south and then connect the trails? We leave the wetlands, the neighbors, nobody's upset. We get our trail down south. I also found it interesting that the city is willing, it looks like we're going around our property. You know, I mean, we've got that fee area down there that we don't want to, you know, mess up, but everybody else's property up north, I mean, sorry, y'all, we're going through. So, I mean, I guess I would like to see the south is already, you've got boat docks, you've got swimming and camping, and it just seems like a trail would fit without the horses. And we leave the north alone until we figure out what we're going to do with the expansion. It'd be half the price. We don't upset the neighbors. We get our trail, and things would just kind of naturally evolve. That's kind of where I'm at.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. So maybe it's going to be either good or bad that we flip-flop these two items. But my question is, how would this project fit into that master plan prioritization standard that we just looked at? I mean, frankly, I would like that information before we start making a decision, because if we're not going to use that idea, then, you know, we could just put that report right on the shelf and leave it to collect dust right now and just say, oh, nice idea, nice exercise, but we don't want to do that.
Let me, Mayor Combs and Councilmember Levison, that's exactly the questions that we should be asking. And again tonight is to get the direction from the council with regards to, think of it more as the route of the trail, not the construction of the trail itself, and that I do believe the ultimate construction should be held up against the entire Parks Master Plan that we're trying to move forward with. And so tonight, and I know it's hard to sort of separate and divorce those two issues, but if you can help us with that, I think we're generally getting the sense that let's get the master plan done. Let's look at this in the context of everything that's needed throughout the community, and then do that very work, Councilmember Levison, that sort of holds it up against both the buildability, the feasibility of being able to build some of the other missing links, in addition to this potential that's out here.
But Dale, as I understand it, you want us to make a choice of which combination of colors, or you want us to say, it says provide direction to staff. So, I mean, if that's what we're doing, we could say, we don't want to do anything tonight. Put it on, let's get the, let's maybe look at this as an opportunity to renew the public comment and on the master plan and trails, and look at this as maybe the idea of this could be a first project to hold up against the new standard. However, I'm not, I'm not real comfortable with some of the other comments I read from the Sculling Club, where, their pros and cons were very similar to the property owner, saying, well, it would be nice to have this amenity. However, with more people on this particular trail, the Sculling Club was frankly afraid of safety and crime and vandalism, which is basically what we're hearing from adjacent property owners. And the fact is, we're not really going to have much control unless we're going to hire additional police officers or rangers to be on bicycles constantly doing loops. And I mean, I have not had the opportunity to go out there and walk all the options because, frankly, you can't do that at this point to, you know, make those decisions. So, you know, I would prefer to let this sit and mull around a bit and see how it compares. And I don't, frankly, I think I'm not for the total loop around the reservoir. I don't like interaction with trails and roads like that, and yeah.
So if I could just respond to that just real quickly. Again, I think what we're looking for tonight is sense of council with regards to loop or something less than that, along with, I would hope, direction that says we want you to look at this in the overall context of everything we're trying to do in the city. In other words, don't run out and start building this trail tomorrow, but put that in the context of the overall master plan. I think there are choices with regards to, you know, maybe after the reservoir is expanded, because I do believe it will be, maybe that's when you complete the loop. And maybe all we do initially is provide the members of the community who have invested heavily in that reservoir out there, and it's a beautiful place, to have access with it that minimizes some of the concerns that we're hearing from the neighbors to the north, and minimizes, Councilmember Levison, some of the road issues on the north. So I think that's really what we're looking for, is sense of council with regards to those kinds of options. Give us that kind of direction, and then as we move forward into design and construction, that's when it moves from a pretty map to something out on the field.
Councilmember Witt.
Thank you, Mayor. I have had concerns about this for a year and a half, and I also have gone out, I've met with the neighbors, walked around it, and just because we can build something doesn't mean we should. And I believe that if you build it, they will come, and it's going to lose part of its charm and its character by the increase of individuals coming out. We don't have to mark all our territory, you know? Just because we have it doesn't mean that we have to throw out a path. That's part of the charm of Longmont, is that we still have wild places. We still have cows in the middle of Longmont in some places. I'm not going to tell you where, because it's actually Boulder County land, but inside Longmont. But that's what's cool about Longmont. And I think that yes, it would be so cool if we could ride our bike around it, but we have McIntosh Lake. If you want to go ride around a lake, you go to McIntosh. And we have lots of trails that people can ride their bikes on, and not every lake has to have a trail around it that you can ride your bike on. Not every lake needs to be like that. And at some point, we bought into this idea that every lake should have a trail around it, and I question that assumption, because having wild land in our boundaries is cool. And I agree with Councilmember Levison that I want to send this through the matrix. I want to see how it stacks up, because based on what I read, it looks as if this would not be as high a priority as missing links trails inside the city of Longmont. I believe it was 3 years ago. It could have been the first year I was on council. We had a discussion about open space, and we actually had a discussion talking about, now, do we want to keep expanding, or do we want to concentrate our resources more centrally? And we said we want to concentrate them more centrally, and we have not revisited that, and so I thought that was our policy. Now, when I was discussing this with other folks, they said, well, it's just a plan. It doesn't mean we're actually going to do it. Well, when I started reading it, the notes say, oh, we're going to start in fall of 2013. So it's not only is it on the plan, we're doing it right now. So I have concerns about that as well. So back to, oh, I talk with my hands, sorry. Back to the question. I think what I would like to see is that we approve the white alignment, which is the same on all the plans. It's basically the southern route, if I understand correctly, right? C. All right. We approve that. Then we send it through the matrix and see how it stacks up. And if it stacks up as a high-ranking priority for our city, then we fund it. But until that point, it's just on the plan. That's what I think we should do. Yeah, that's a motion. I move.
I have the mic.
He's got, oh, yeah. Yes. Councilmember Santos.
Sorry, Councilmember Witt, missed your chance. You know, and I'm one of those people that says it's a map. And I said that when the first time we saw this. It's a map. The line's on a map. I like pretty maps because maps can change. I said this about the Southwest Transportation Plan, and the neighbors out there didn't like it either. You know, I voted for this, and folks didn't like that either. Seeing this, there are aspects that I like, and there are aspects I don't like. I have concerns that we're really missing the links that are internal to the city that are not connecting the trails. I do have concerns about areas in the north. I have concerns that if someone has an agricultural lease and is encroaching on reservoir land, that we're not enforcing that either. So that needs to be addressed. So if, you know, again, if someone's too far where they're supposed to be, we need to go tell them to get back on your piece of property. If we own land that is maybe unfortunately too close to people, I'm sorry. You know, we can build a trail. Happens. You know, I do like the idea of potentially waiting on and putting this through the master plan. I do also like the idea that Councilmember Bagley brought up is go ahead and seeing what can be done in the south, because it's probably done. I've ridden on Crusher. I've tried to ride a bike on Crusher fine pavement on trails. It's not very much fun. You know, mostly you can try to do that on concrete paths. You know, I do hear that residents have pay taxes, pay open space tax. We want to be able to use the facilities that we've paid for. Unlike in Boulder County, we have a whole lot of open space, but nobody can use it. Residents pay for Union Reservoir; they want to be able to use it. If they want to walk around it, we should find a way to be able to walk around it. But perhaps at this time is not the best time to do it, in case we do have to enlarge it. I want to know, again, I'd like to know when we get that permit for Windy Gap as well. We can't, every year we're still waiting, we're still waiting, we're still waiting. You know, somebody make the motion to, you know, apparently Councilmember Wood's going to get back in here real soon, and bless her, and make a motion. But I like the whole idea of a trail around Union. One way or another, if we inundate or we don't inundate, we have the information for a trail around Union. People may not like it. It may not be this council. It may be a council in 2035, 2055, or, you know, I'll be long gone. Most of us in this room may be long gone. Or fast tracks eventually may get here, 2075. I love throwing RTD under the bus. But again, thank you, Scott. But again, we don't know. But if we can put a trail that's going to be able to be useful in the meantime, why not? Kathy, go ahead.
I just want to point out another option before you put together a motion is, we really are trying to put forward a vision for the trail, and we're not recommending phasing, and I think you're talking about two different things. Some of you are talking about just recommending an out and back trail, and some of you are alluding to phasing, and we could certainly come back and talk more about phasing if you would like to do that. So, I also want to point out an out and back trail, I think we need to be very careful where we end it, and I think we need to look at that more closely so we're not promoting trespassing and some other issues that could come about that we were concerned about on the team, and that's one reason why we thought a loop trail was more responsible, because people will do what they set out to do, and if we don't provide a responsible way through the sensitive environmental areas, the private lands, and the agricultural lands, the team that felt that was a more responsible approach than just letting people do what they will and go on the roads, which may not be safe for some users. So we would want to look closely at that out and back if that's the recommendation. So
Sure, and I get that. I mean, you have an end of a trail, people are going to potentially jump it. I don't like the horse aspect at all. At all. If you're not going to have, I have concerns with dogs being on the trails. Dogs, you see dog excrement places. Horses make bigger excrement, and sometimes horse owners aren't as
They don't pick up.
aren't as conscientious of picking up after the horses either. Again, I do like potentially the phasing aspect, because we don't know when Windy Gap is going to happen, or we have to inundate. That's it.
I think I'm going to jump back in here. Everybody spoke. He started. I go around McIntosh Lake quite a bit and just see other people enjoy that. And I know if that was just a U trail, it would probably only get 20%. What keeps that thing safe is people are always moving, so you don't have endpoints where people are going to congregate. So I think that's probably why we don't see the crime out there that everybody was expecting, this high crime. Well, it never happened. And I think the loop, keeping people continuously moving so you always have people around, is a good thing. So I'm a strong supporter of a loop trail. Now, I personally am never going to go over there because it's on the other side of town, but when I have this asset that our family enjoys so much, I would just like people on this side of town to have that same kind of opportunity that we have on that side of the town. Is also, I feel pretty strongly about that. But I understand people are concerned about building something that may, in several decades or 15 years to 30 years from now, get flooded. But in the meantime, boy, we've gotten a lot of use out of it. So I'm not all that concerned about that. But anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. Councilmember Hyatt.
Thank you. I think I would like to direct staff to develop a U-Trail plan and bring it back to council. And then I think at that time, I think we could send it through the process. Don't you think, if we just do the first step of seeing what there is available as far as U-Trail? Or I can say direct staff to develop a U-Trail and evaluate it next to our parks, trails, master plan. That is a motion. All right.
Councilmember Levison.
Actually, I'm going to let Councilmember Samori get in because he hasn't jumped in yet.
Councilmember Samori.
Thank you. I guess I don't have an issue with the trail going all the way around. What I would like to see is minimizing the impact on the neighbors. I know we own the land and we can build on it, but last week we had a developer that also owned the land and got a variance from planning and zoning to be able to go 15 feet on his own property from the line, if you will. And we made him go back and redraw his plans because some neighbors objected to it because it was too close to open space. Okay, so if we're going to treat our citizens that way, then we ought to really look at ourselves in the same light. And if there's a way to build it around the lake without impacting the privacy of the people that own homes there, then we ought to take a look at it and see what the additional cost is or isn't. And if it's, if it's going to be flooded in 15 or 20 years, and we spend a few extra dollars now, and we keep the people happy, I think it's worth it. That would be my suggestion, is that if we are going to do a full loop, then let's look at how we don't impact the people that live there. So your question was to loop or not to loop, right?
Councilmember Levison.
So one other thing I just want to understand from the motion is, are we also clarifying that we do not want any money spent at this point? Because staff was asking us, saying that there were funds available, but if approved to move forward, staff will commence with design work and will need to include value engineering. So basically, we're saying don't move forward on anything but a U-shaped trail, and don't spend a dime.
It has to go through the master plan.
And then we apply the master plan standard. This is our beta test on that, and that, well, I just want to make sure we weren't spending a red dime, because, okay. But I just want to make sure, Councilmember Santos, because I want to be as specific as we can.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I also enjoy the trail around McIntosh Lake, but there are some issues at Union that we don't have. One is the traffic issue. There's no traffic issue. There's no driveway crossings. There's no agricultural encroachment. And we're not paying for a trail that could be underwater. No matter what the time limit is, that disturbs me a little bit. I am in favor of Councilmember Witt's motion and will be voting for it. And those are the reasons.
Mayor, if I may jump in.
Sure.
I think if the motion passes, what we would really see from a staff perspective is we would pull the dollars for trails, and then we would put it through that process and that prioritization, so we could, based on how council would dictate the prioritization on the projects, then we would use those funds on that prioritization. So we do hear clearly that no dollar spent, design the trail as council directed, and then if this passes, and then what we would do is put it through the prioritization process associated with the master plan, and I guess that's the way we hear the motion if it passes by council. Just wanted to make that clarification. That's okay.
Okay, I guess we should vote. Okay, it passes 6-1 with myself descending.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next item is, yeah. Do you want to introduce the next item?
Mayor Coombs, your next item is a discussion regarding regulating Amendment 64 for marijuana establishments, and Ben Ortiz will be your presenter.
Councilmember Singh.
So, hi Ben. I may preempt your presentation here. I'm guessing everybody read the document, and the recommendation is for council to propose a ban. So I'm going to make a motion to do so.
Okay. So we're not going to hear it? Wow. Well,
Excuse me, before we vote, we have other staff member. Maybe we'd like to hear from one of our commanders or anybody else that would, of our staff, just to say, yeah, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, let's vote. We're doing the right thing.
Well, I don't know if we're doing the right thing. All right. Pass 7-0. You know, I guess part of my
Best presentation I've seen.
yeah. My big concern is, you know, I mean, the citizens of Longmont voted, what, 58 to 42%, so that's pretty overwhelming that they're for. But we don't know why they voted, because this law really has two parts. One is it kind of decriminalizes marijuana, small amounts growing, and stuff that most of us are probably fine with. So if they're voting for that, then that makes sense, and I would agree with that. But if we're voting for it because they want the business opportunities and all the pot shops here, see, we just don't know the intentions of the voters at this point. That's why it's hard for me. I mean, mostly I would like to say, well, that's a real mandate, so we should support what the voters want. But because the amendment was really kind of two parts, it makes it really difficult for us to know the real hearts of our voters. So that's why I was kind of conflicted about this one. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, sorry, Ben, that you guys were here so late. Unfortunately, fortunately, members of council, we have two shots at this. We have this direct staff to bring back the ordinance, so we have a first reading, and then we'll have, if it passes in the first reading, we have a second reading. So there'll be at least another opportunity for you to make a presentation, as well as the attorneys and anyone else to ask questions at that time. So.
Councilman Sonali.
So I checked, and the way that the thing was passed is, as a community, we have the right to decide whether we allow them or not.
Yeah.
So,
but we don't really know what our community wants.
But we, as a community, have the right, from a legal standpoint, to decide whether to allow the shops in town or not.
Right. Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. The reason I voted the way I voted is that I've been to Amsterdam a couple times on business, and exactly. And I just don't. I mean, I can understand if people want to use marijuana, carry less than an ounce, but I think that the overall demeanor, allure, the local color of Longmont would change significantly if we started having recreational pot shops. And I also think that prior city councils have already made decisions, et cetera, that kind of set the tone. And that's why I voted the way I did.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. So does anyone want to still see the presentation? Okay. All right. I guess it's time for comments from council members and the mayor. Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. For those of you that watched it streaming online, like Dale Rademacher, we had a hackathon this weekend that was very successful and gave out some really great awards. The first place award, and I'll just go through the list. First place, $1,500 went to the youngest participant, 14 years old, was Jackson Roberts. He created an app that is going to, an application for your phone. It's going to bring in the calendars of the DDA, hopefully here real soon, the library, and Visit Longmont into one application, so you have it on your phone and be able to see what's going on in Longmont. Second place went out to another local resident, taking out the trash. You can be able to get a reminder of when your trash is going to be picked up, as well as your recycle. And then another one by Andy Corliss, Civic Engage, another application that will tell you what's going on in activities, volunteer activities that are going on in the city, and which have a whole lot of people, which needs some folks, and which has really no participation. And you can go out and find what you like to do. The council gave 2 awards of to Dixon Dick for story boxes, which is an interesting type of application that can, if we set up certain boxes on a map of the city, someone tweets, hey, I'm going to go around Lake McIntosh. The city can tweet back, hey, if you're going to go by Lake McIntosh, why don't you go check out Dawson Park, things of that nature. There's also an open bike that Councilmember Levison mentioned earlier about basically bike trails that can also be hopefully applied to trails in general. The city manager also gave an award for find a fire hydrant. And then if you're walking your dog, So Skyline High School also won an award. They basically revamped the city's website. Actually looks very nice. I don't know if and when we're going to implement that. Sandy's nodding her head. The design elements, it looks very nice. And then the Civic Engage also won a sponsor award. So it was those individuals were at Skyline High School all weekend. I want to thank staff for their hard work and pulling that off. It looked like a lot of fun. I was there Friday and a little bit Saturday and Judge Sunday. And thanks to Councilmember Witt and Councilmember Levison that also attended, and the city manager. Great event. I hope we do this again and see what else these young people and adults that were there can come up with and help us branch out to the city. So good job, everybody.
Councilmember Witt.
Thank you. Another great event that we had here in Council Chambers today was doing Democracy Day. We had students from across St. Vrain Valley School District come and tackle problems that our community is looking at right now. And I'm still waiting to find out. They had a kind of an American Idol type scenario. I don't know who the winner was. Marijuana regulation. Okay, we'll have to find out more about that. So this is the 4th year that they've done it, and I've gone every time, and I really love it. And I hope that our community continues to support that. On a personal note, I need a replacement for Coffee with Council this weekend because I am going to be out of town. Is anybody available? Saturday.
No, I thought it was Bagley and you.
Oh, good.
You're not on it. You're not on it.
On the council, on the calendar, it has me down. So,
No, it's-
oh, good.
It's Bagley and
So
Swarn.
never mind.
Okay.
I'm out of town anyway. I will try to, don't expect to see you there.
Councilmember Levison. Oh, excuse me, Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I actually last week didn't get to my business of the week, and I had an exciting one. We have a new place in town called Chub Burger, and it's really, really good. I did personally eat one, and I'm not a hamburger fan, and I loved it. So I think y'all ought to go try Chub Burgers down on Ken Pratt Boulevard.
Councilmember Levison.
So I just want to commend all the staff to, if I start trying to name all the names of everyone who participated in the hackathon this weekend, I'm going to miss somebody. So I just want to give a shout out to all the staff members. And I got the feeling that IT staff thought this was really a cool thing to do. This was a highlight for them to be in the room with all kinds of people that were running in the same direction just as fast. And I think it's hard for them to collaborate at that kind of level on the technology coolness that's out there with everyone who is into that aspect of technology and coding. And the event couldn't have been possible without, council members agreeing to try it out. And I think that it's was a very interesting approach, and it didn't look like there wasn't a lot of great photo opportunities. However, there was so much electrical current and brain power going on that if you had a different type of device to measure that, it would have been off the charts. Sometimes a very quiet room with people and screens and keyboards means there's a lot of brain activity going on. So I commend everyone for the effort this weekend, plus some local residents, Scott Converse and his team of colleagues at Pratt Associates who were working on the aspects of volunteers, and thanking again the sponsors. This afternoon, the Doing Democracy this afternoon was quite interesting, and we didn't follow any of the recommendations that the marijuana regulation groups, two of them, and the other finalist was a group that presented on the achievement gap. All very interesting things. I think that plenty of ideas to steal. And I want to thank not just the students, but it was a lot of work, again, by volunteers and the staff at schools that really made it possible. And I guess to sum up, they should have this maybe extended into not just the leadership of the schools, but as an exercise when they do civics for students, maybe make that part of the curriculum. So the other thing is, I know Kent Willman has been working with CML to get this kind of format established with teachers who are doing history and civics, and I think that'll just help. I think the students also understood the difficulties and challenges that we face in making the decision. So I think it's going to be very interesting as these students move forward into adulthood, how they view government and the problems that they're going to encounter.
Councilmember Samori.
Thank you, Mayor Combs. I guess another business of the week that we should mention is brand new to town, Antonio's Mexican food on the 200 block of Main. They originated from Taos, New Mexico, and they were looking to open a second restaurant, and they chose Longmont. Kudos to them. And it is good food. Tried their dessert. It's killer.
Oh, thank you. I guess I would like to, first and foremost, thank Gabe for Councilmember Santos for filling in for me while I was gone for a few days and helping out with the hackathon and helping signing documents. And anyway, I sure appreciate his teamwork and his help. And thank you. And so, City Manager, any remarks?
Yes, Mayor, Council. I would like to echo the thanks for staff that the work that they put in on the hackathon. It was a great event, and one of the things that I did want to point out, when opportunity presents itself, sometimes you need to seize it. And so we also had some really good partners in that discussion, which was the school district. And so I think we're seeing a really good partnership develop in that arena. And the winner of the hackathon, I think his name is Jackson. We are working with the school district. They are creating a program where they get these students and they can actually contract with them to do work. And so Sandy is in discussions now on how we do that, and we can bring that app and really bring it live to the community, because it's something we've definitely been working on. So definitely a good relationship building activity, not only for the students, but also for organizations within our community, and we can use that to strengthen it. So we're really excited about the opportunities and really the long-term opportunities of working with the youth of our community to really provide us with things that we've been thinking about and wanting to work on. We just haven't had the time. So really excited about that opportunity. On another note, during the last council meeting, Dale talked about the cash in lieu of water rights discussion, and we are seeing a number of questions come forward. And so we were going to recommend that we have a study session on the topic. Okay. But at the same time, staff made some presentations to the water board this week, and I wanted Dale to provide a quick update. Because we would like direction if council wants us to have a study session, but also get some direction on timing, because I think we got a sense of council's desire on timing, and we want to make sure that we're consistent as we move forward.
Thanks, Harold. So yesterday, the staff went back following the meeting last Tuesday with regards to the cash and lieu issue, and briefed the water board on that. And I was not in the meeting, so I'm going to also ask Mayor Pro Tem Santos to correct me if I don't get all the details right here. But what I understand from the staff is that the water board certainly wants to take up the charge in doing it. And in fact, they want to sort of be very thoughtful and deliberate about doing it. And so we had a proposed schedule that the staff came forward with to the water board that essentially would have the issue back in front of the city council late June, early July. What the water board is wanting to do is maybe take another couple of weeks on that to 30 days to do that work. My take on that is I don't believe there's a huge issue in that area. In the meantime, the cash and lieu fee would stay where it is today. There would be no change to that. Again, based on the direction, council, that you gave us, that the fee would be changed once we come back with options for you all to consider. The other thing the water board is also interested in, if possible, they would like to have a joint meeting with the city council on that issue of cash in lieu and that aspect of the city's overall water supply, along some of the questions that certain members of the council have also been asking. So I think that could be a good opportunity for water board and council to have that kind of dialogue, and then to sort of give us direction further on that if there is any further direction. Timing of that, we're thinking could be as early as the June 4th study session that you have. And so that would help us too on scheduling. If council's interested in a joint meeting, staff can work towards getting that arranged in June. And Mayor Pro Tem Santos, if I missed any of the details, please let me know.
You got it. Councilmember Soren.
Well, I would definitely be interested in a study session, brainstorming session with the water board, and June 4th is great.
Councilmember Edison.
So the fluctuation in price could be a moot point by the time we meet with the water board as well. Could it not?
Mayor Combs and Councilmember Levinson, I don't think so. I think, and in fact, if anything, what you've got going on right now, and I think I said this last week, is you're in a fairly volatile water market right now. So I don't think the price of CBT is going to come down between now and June. In fact, I would guess it's going to continue to escalate. But some of the options that we would like to bring forward, things like looking at the price of new projects and bringing water forward to the city, are things that can help stabilize the fluctuations, if you will. So in other words, that you're not setting it to simply one metric. And so that's part of the work that I think we're going to come forward with.
I guess the goal, part of what I see as the goal of the meeting, is to hear from the water board, because they have some qualifications that many of us do not have in the area of water law, that sort of thing, and also to have a discussion about how we view and adjust the cash in lieu when there's a very high spike and a very large gap. And talking about phasing in something is great. However, if you have something that's a commodity, whether it be water or pork bellies, you're not going to sell your pork bellies for $12 if the going rate is 15 or 16. And same thing with water. You have to. It's kind of that fluctuation, and then you have to decide. Frankly, do you set it as a policy? We're going to look at market rate, except when the differential is too large, and we're not going to to try to not respond appropriately when we have a resource that's monetized. I just want to hear from them and get some guidance around that approval, especially if we don't feel that it's a policy decision of council upon recommendation of a citizen board. and just to make sure that we're doing things in the best interest of the city and the community.
Councilmember Santos.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the water board and Councilmember Samori sent Dale some emails regarding some questions. The water board saw those, recognized that it might be, and I don't want to get into their what they want to talk to us about, but they saw more of a discussion with council, not just with cash in lieu, but the three acre feet that development needs to bring in when they annex in, things of that nature. They see a larger project than just the cash in lieu. So they see this as a really good project for them to take on. They understand that and actually look forward to it, while noting that perhaps basing our fee on maybe CBT might not be justified might not be the right way to go anymore. So again, Water Board wants to have that discussion with members with council, and look forward to that discussion and then tackling this project from here on out. So
yeah, I think I support both Santos and Councilmember Samori's recommendation that we have this study session. I think it'd be a good thing. We can flush out all the stuff that we need to at that time. So thank you. So that's our general consensus. Is everybody on board? All right, we've got your direction then. All right, do you have anything else? Okay, City Attorney, any comments?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.